All right, we are live. Thank you for your patience in us getting started. I was at the Seek and Share Truth conference this past weekend. Awesome conference. Met a lot of amazing people. Met some of you from the comments section. You're like, I'm so and so from the comments section. It's like, oh, great. Great to actually put a name to that, or a face, to that screen name. Uh, Now, I took all my equipment with me and I did not realize how long it would take to reset it up. So I did not start soon enough to get that all set up for today's stream in time. So that's the main reason why we are starting late. But I thank you guys for coming today. Oh, yep. Looks like there was a problem with the bot. So I'll give Mary a chance to introduce herself in a second here. It looks like its authorization to YouTube had timed out, so I'm going to have to reauthorize that. That'll be up and running here in just 1 second. But what we're going to be talking today is we're going to be continuing the series. We started the series very early on in history, thousands of years before the time of Islam, getting a cultural background for I don't want to say prehistoric, that's the wrong word, but pre-Islamic Arabia. And we're going to be continuing that series today with an emphasis on stone worship. Go ahead and introduce the subject, or if you want to start with your fun fact, that would work as well, whichever you want to do.
I'll introduce the subject first. So what we're doing is we're picking up from where we left off. We actually did start in the prehistoric last time. We started in the Neolithic, and it wasn't the historic area in the Hijaz yet because there are no writings. We made it to like 600 BC. There are no writings in 600 BC in the Hijaz. It's still the prehistoric. So if we're talking about the area where Mecca would eventually be, it is still very much prehistoric at this time. So we're going to focus on the black stone and also similar stones to it. But before then, Thaddeus asked me a funny question. He said, "I heard about this. Someone told me about this fatwa about not licking ice cream, and Germans shouldn't do it because it might offend Muslims. What on earth is this?" And I said, "Oh yeah." He says, "Are there weird fatwas about food?" I said, "Oh yes, yes there are weird fatwas about food. And let me share one of those with you now, if you'll bring it up, Thaddeus.
Yep, 1 second here. I was
Ah,
in the process of copying the authorization. Good. All right, that
and
has been added.
I am afraid
Oh,
that, yeah,
I was gonna say, you know what? It won't add until I restart this because I got to authorize the bot in order to pull up the screen share because
at
it's
some
what
yeah,
pulls it
at some
up.
point you can turn my color back to neutral again because I think my
You
color's
fixed your
correct and now I'm green. Because I'm no
and still
longer
has
orange
the
in
messy
my
colors
camera.
from last
Yeah,
time when
it's
it wasn't working correctly.
yes.
So yeah, bear with us, everyone. This is the first stream, obviously, in a week and a half, and we got to get
Yeah.
everything reset up the way we want it to
Well,
be.
I'll just start reading it, and whenever you have a chance, you can bring it
Yep.
up. Okay. So this is a story from 2011. However, I have seen a number of clerics give fatwa similar to this. I have seen them written as well. This is not just one dude, right? So, an unnamed cleric based in Europe has issued a ban on women touching fruits and vegetables resembling the male sexual organ to avoid sexual thoughts. The Egyptian news site Bikya Masr on Wednesday quoted the cleric whose diktat featured in an article on El Sunnousa, a religious publication. The cleric has said that women should not even get close to bananas or cucumbers. If a woman wishes to eat these food, a third party, preferably a male related to them, such as their father or husband, should cut the item into small pieces and serve, the cleric dictated. According to the cleric, bananas and cucumbers resemble the male penis and therefore could arouse women or make them think of sex. The cleric also added that carrots and zucchini added carrots, and zucchini of the list of forbidden foods for women. The news about this latest diktat against women went viral on the web, with liberal Muslims feeling enraged and embarrassed. Repression of women in ultra conservative Islamic societies has been an intense subject of debate throughout the world, aka actually Islamic societies, all right? So there are a number of these, and it's not just to might make them think of sex. They're not supposed to be alone with them because women will then use they are so out of control. Remember that this is a religion that believes that people have no self-control, and uh, your your reward for not doing, or at least not getting caught with or repenting for all the horrible things that you want to do now, is being able to get to do all of those things in Jannah, right? So yes, yes, John Wilson found the fact they use the word diktat especially funny. Yes, it's very bad. Uh, but they believe that there are a number of fatwa out there about women not being allowed around large carrots or zucchini because they will use them as sexual items, according to Muslim clerics. Like, can't let women have this because you know what they're going to do. So that is my fun read of the day, and we'll get into the
Yep, yep,
actual
yep.
topic.
So what about watermelons? Are those perfectly halal, or I
Uh,
mean perfectly haram,
I think that
perhaps?
they're perfectly halal, and also if Allah does not have hands and feet and or feet and at least three eyes, then he is nothing except for a watermelon, as Anthony Rogers reminded me of recently. So,
There's a
mhm.
many of the audience probably are aware, but just in case, there's a famous fatwa where someone asks whether they can use a watermelon to pleasure themselves, and they're like, "Well, it's the same as using your hand, so if that's allowed, then you can use a watermelon, and in fact, it's preferable because your hand might chafe your private parts." So there you go. You can use a watermelon for your sexual pleasure if you're a
I thought
male,
that was
but
for
if
women.
you're
Yeah.
yeah, I was going to say, but if you are a woman, then apparently you are not allowed to have any pleasure with a carrot.
Well,
So
I
perfectly
have
consistent.
actually also run into clerics who recommend them, so it's a confusing topic. Um,
One of the great debates of Islam, I suppose, whether or not carrots can be used for sexual pleasure. What a religion. What a amazing religion. This is clearly straight from the true God of the universe. Because how else would we have any answers to questions like this if it wasn't for clerics telling us what to do? All right, so you want me to bring up your presentation?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I wasn't sure if we were ready to go or.
Yeah, we are ready to go.
Oh, yeah, actually, I wanted to read a couple quick comments from the audience. I meant to do these right when we started, but oh well. Um, so first of all, shake my head. Who's I think he is being late? Apostate prophet. Well, I definitely don't want to be associated with that guy, so I will try to be on time in the future. And Carol says I just got home from the Seek and Share our conference 10 minutes ago. It was joy to know Thaddeus and his wife Crystal and Mary in person, and it was good meeting you as well, Carol. Great time had by all. Um, I'm waiting to see what the audio. So the live audio was not great in general. I'm waiting. We also recorded it separately with a different camera, so I'm waiting to see what that audio looks like, and then I'll either post my two talks with that audio, or I will just re-record them. But they but my presentations will definitely be made available on this channel. All right,
All right.
we
So let us. Oh wait. Ah, I forgot that I added a whole bunch of stuff because of course I did. So we a lot of times
did you
yeah.
Sorry, I don't know if you were intending to share
Oh,
the
that's kind of
the
boring.
actual
Sorry.
PowerPoint or
Let
the
me actually
presentation.
share it. Slideshow
There you
from
go.
this slide so that you guys can see it better. And let
There
me
you
make
go.
it. Should I make it smaller? Or am I, let's see how much smaller I can make it so that it doesn't overlap. Is that, okay, that looks good. So their faces aren't over the words, right? Okay, so a lot of people think when they think of the stone of the Kaaba, they think that there's one, but there isn't one. There's a whole bunch, and there are of course more stones at the place where you stone the devil at Mina, right? So um, if you go, uh, so there are two in the Kaaba that are still important. There's a black stone, and then there is the Yemeni corner, which I've heard called in a couple places the stone of felicity. It is a different special stone that isn't the black stone, and it isn't set out the way other things are, right? And what is left of the black stone, as people are noting, in some cases it says that there are eight, or excuse me, that there are 15, were 15 stones after the black stone was stolen, taken away, thrown in a latrine, shattered, brought back in pieces. There are, this is live, by the way, Sam. So there are between, there are like 7 that are visible right now, and they're supposed to be 8 more like hidden away inside the mass of wax and scented stuff that's holding them all. Okay. So, live and in a certain color. I'm still green, but it is a color. It is a color. Um, but so that is one. So what they call the black stone, which is 15 stones, 7 of which are visible, is one stone. But there's also that Yemeni stone, the stone of felicity. Um, and so if you go to, whenever you enter this area, there was also the makam, which is like a standing place, which was essentially a stone that looks like it had something like a footprint in it. And people touching it so much actually smoothed it out. So they went in and chiseled a footprint shape back in it. So it looks like a footprint again, even though it got smoothed out by hands, right? Um, so that makes 3 stones already. We also have the Asafa and Al Marwa, which are 2 rocky promontories that stick out of the ground that Muslims run back and forth between. Now we talked about last time this was 2 weeks ago. Last time we were here, how there were piles of stones with long, skinny enclosures that may have been used for running back and forth. A lot of these activities, and of course, there were the 3 pillars that people used to what they later decided was stone the shaitan, and there may have also been stacks of stones for throwing your own stone at, putting your own stone in, and other places as well. Um, so all of these things are part of what still exists in the masjid enclosure before it was even more pronounced. Like before any of this, there were probably a number of other things that were taken out because they weren't one of Muhammad's favorites, and so he declared that those things were pagan, but these things are fine, totally fine. They're great. So don't think that there's just one stone. Now, one important thing is that all Islamic prayer is directed not just to the Kaaba, but especially toward the black stone. Note that Muhammad stood behind the maqam so that he's praying through the maqam, through one stone, and facing another stone, and he is bowing down before it. Okay? So he is prostrating to the stone. This is an act of worship in Islam, explicitly an act of worship in Islam, and it cannot be anything else. So I like the comment. Someone said that Allah is a moon god. They're wrong. Allah is an Arabic god of rocks. Not exactly, because most pagan gods were associated with being able to be localized in power in stones and rocks. So we'll cover those a little bit more in a moment. But right now we're sticking with now we're restricting ourselves down from all the different pagan stones to just one pagan stone, even though now it's smashed, right? But one pagan stone. It was at one point probably one pagan stone, which was a black stone of the Kaaba. So Islamic legend says it comes from Jinnah, and then it fell to earth or was thrown out of Jinnah, and it was put there either by Adam or for Adam, probably by Allah. So indeed, Mecca is a tourist attraction, and that is
Yeah, so
what it kind
I
of
pulled
always was.
yeah, I pulled that up because interestingly, in other parts of the Islamic world where they can't necessarily get to Mecca, they've built their own pseudo Meccas that are also tourist attractions, and where they make sometimes they don't, sometimes they just say it's a replica or whatever, but sometimes they actually make claims about, prophets visiting there and stuff. So it seems that it's all about the tourists, attracting people to your particular black stone.
So now we have so this is kind of the Islamic view of it. It comes from Jinnah, either by Adam or for Adam. It was originally white. That's what's usually called. Uh, it's also called, we'll find out that it's called a hyacinth stone. So a blue stone. It's a word sometimes used for sapphire, sometimes for other things. In the ancient world, people often didn't really care what the precious stone was. They just kind of named it by its color. Um, it turned black either because it absorbed sins or because impure women touched it. And that is in the history of Al Tabari, Volume 1, page 303 in the Common English translation that we've got. And so the black stone was also not at the Kaaba for a certain period of time and then returned. And this was before the time of Muhammad. I'm not talking about being stolen. These are ideas that are in the sources, like from before, that is ascribed to prior to Muhammad by early Islamic scholars. So, first question is it from Jinnah? So, Islamic religion states it's from Jinnah. Now, and here's an example of that. Oh, and I didn't clip that particular thing. You can find it in the history of Al Tabari. You can find it in a whole bunch of other places. Um, it's also called the hand of of Al Rahman. So the hand of using a monotheistic title, right? And they're saying that that's Allah, but this is his hand. Now, given how Muhammad spoke of hands and things like that, this is a very, because he spoke of them generally very, very literally. So this is not some sort of vague, like it's got some of the power of Allah in it, right? It really has to be a very strong statement. Now, this is very daif, and you would understand why, because this is a particularly problematic um, uh, verse. So, or verse hadith. So, what you want to do with anything that's super problematic, you want to come up with an excuse to mark it down as daif Rahman, not Ramen. But yes, very funny, Stephen Young. The Hand of Ramen, he wrote. Allah, flying spaghetti monster confirmed. Very nice. So, essentially, with the way the beautiful science of isnad works, is that you can manipulate your chains of narration to make them essentially either good or bad, depending on how you want to count a particular person, because there are usually enough people in the chain that you can say something bad about someone to get rid of something, even if you accept that person for all the ones you like. So whenever you see daif, do not believe that this is daif because of some intelligent action. It's daif because rarely is that why it's daif. It's usually just because they don't like it, right? So they come up with the room. So, and then there's another one. This one's about Ibn Umar, right? Ibn Umar, the third, this third uh, bullet point, right? He says, I do it, and that's touching, but while he was extra clingy, like hanging on to both the Yemen cornerstone and the black stone, right? Both of them, right? And he said, I'm doing this because I heard the messenger of Allah saying, touching them, the two stones of the two corners, this is the dual form, atones for sins. And so, or expiate sins in some of the other versions of this hadith, is how it's translated sometimes. So, it's not just the black stone, it's the other one. But the black stone's a super special one. The other one is less super, right? Um, I like that. There are only two grades of hadith, convenient and inconvenient, that can change depending on if the Muslims he thinks he can win with it. That is very often very much the case. I've noticed that before I even get to the bottom, I can go, I bet this one's graded down because they're not going to like this one. And if you can do that, there's something wrong with their methodology there. Then our last one is another hadith. The Messenger of Allah said about the black stone, by Allah, Allah will raise it on the day of resurrection. Now, let us understand what raise it on the day of resurrection means. That means it's dead and comes back to life, is raised from the dead on the day of resurrection, with two eyes by which it sees and a tongue that it speaks with, testifying to whoever touched it in truth. So this is a stone that it has a soul that can be resurrected into a body with eyes and a tongue of some sort. Very interesting, right? And it testifies to whoever touched in truth because it is interceding for them. So it's removing your sins because whoever got touched, it takes your sins away, and it also testifies on your behalf and intercedes for you after it is resurrected. Pretty interesting stuff here for a monotheistic religion with only one God. It's
So
often called. Go ahead.
I was going to say Islamic origins corrected you, or the other commenter, I should say, on the two grades of hadith, and so there's actually only one fiction.
Yeah, there is a lot. I think that there are a number in there that no one would ever make up, but there are a huge number in there that are clearly, if you learn later Islamic history, you know which group is fabricating this and why. It's quite interesting. You can say, oh, this one was fabricated by this group, this one, and they'll have both of them. The funny thing is they'll have fabrications from both sects that are fighting about something within the same collection, which is
Well,
actually quite.
exactly. I mean, how are you going to, if there's a dispute in your doctrine, right? Two groups are disputing over something. What better way to solve it than say that Muhammad agrees with you? So, of course, they both
Yep.
make up sayings of Muhammad.
But it's funny that sometimes both of them get accepted. In some cases, only one of them gets accepted, period. But in other cases, both versions are in there. It's very funny. Um, so it's often called a meteorite, so at least seems extraterrestrial. Now, we'll understand in a moment some Western misunderstandings about what Muslims would think about this, but in general, Muslims would want it to be a meteorite. However, meteorites are almost all naturally black or dark brown. They are never white. Meteorites have a distinctive appearance within a number of appearances, right? The black stone is known not to be originally black, and we have a lot of good evidence that it actually isn't black now. It's just really, really filthy. It's just gross from all the hands that touched it and all the goop that's put on it. The most common belief of geologists who have put their eyeballs on it is that it is an agate. The ones that have actually managed to see, the little pieces of stone that are in there. They say that and I've found multiple folks who have said that they have seen it and it looks more like an agate than anything else. So an agate would be
Yeah,
strictly terrestrial. Yeah.
yeah. I was on Wikipedia earlier because I was looking for good photos to put in the thumbnail, and it said that it's very unlikely to be an actual meteorite, that it might be a rock that ancient people mistook for a meteorite, but it doesn't seem to have, no proper tests have been done, but it doesn't seem just visually to have the proper chemical composition.
So this is from, you can see over here, my source, the cobblestone, not a meteorite, probably an agate. This is from 1974. But so Islam is my identity. There are two stones inside the walls of the Kaaba. He asked me how many that there are in the Kaaba. There are two stones in the corners of the Kaaba, and then there is a stone, like a fragment of tile that's supposed to be the standing place of Jibril at some point. I don't know why Jibril was there or when he was there or why that place is special, but whatever. And then there's the footprints of Abraham supposedly, and then there's Al Safa and Al Mara, and those are the main stones that are in the Kaaba currently. There were probably a number more, um, but those are the main ones that are here currently. So now we're just talking, but we're focusing on the black stone right now, guys. Yeah. So the special thing to note here is I have not found any any. I have not found the researchers that you've talked about using X-ray diffraction on it. If you want to tell me what it's used
Yeah,
for, I can, but I have not found that.
so there was a news story a couple years ago. I don't know if this is what the commenter is referring to or not, but there was, I only saw this today when I was again looking for deciding what image I wanted to put in. But let me go ahead and just share the image real quick. That they did some like it's really just a regular photograph, but they did some like high resolution photographs of it, and this is the picture
Yeah,
that was in the media reports, among a couple others. Which this picture, I'm not, I'm not, I'm not a geologist or anything, but this picture, yeah, this does not look like a meteorite at all.
not even a stony one. Well, the stuff around it, the red stuff is not the meteorite, or it's not the meteorite, is not the black stone itself. The red stuff is all the gum and wax and resin that's stuck on it. But here's the issue:
Ah, I see.
everyone
I
who
see.
has said that they have, and they like put more wax on, polish occasionally to keep it from disappearing entirely, because the touching of hands have they're quite used to. So another study in 2017 used a scanning electron microscopy to examine the surface. They discovered microorganisms embedded in the stone, suggesting that may have been exposed to biological activity. Um, in 2014, X-ray fluorescence and uh, Raman spectroscopy to analyze the black stone. I don't know how to pronounce that. The results revealed that it was made up of several mineral components, including basalt and igneous rock commonly found in volcanic regions. This finding supports the theory that the black stone is of terrestrial origin. Now,
Yeah,
the
like I
issue,
said, the
yeah,
the consensus of experts is that it's highly unlikely to have come from space, even though they haven't done any chemical analysis to say,
definitely.
100% for sure. But as near as anyone can tell, it probably has not come from space.
So here's one source on those. So um, nothing has found that it has any likelihood of being a meteorite. And what is funny is that this particular article says that is widely considered a meteorite by both laymen and scientists in the 70s. People just weren't thinking about it, right? And is recorded as a probable example in a 1953 catalog of meteorites. And although we have been unable to obtain the official view in spite of much correspondence, it appears to be regarded by Muslims, there's a misspelling there, as an object from heaven. As extraterrestrial space, in a scientific sense, is not the same as heaven in a religious context, and that's just flat wrong when it comes to the Islamic paradigm, because according to the early Islamic sources, the Jannah is literally above the seven pancake flat Earths, and there's a stretch of sky, and then there's another ocean up there, right? And then right above that is the first Jannah, right? And then there's seven Jannahs stacked. So just like shooting stars are stars that Allah has thrown at jinn who are trying to listen in on you, right? Or trying to listen in on a law. So something that is thrown out of heaven would have to pass through space in a literal sense and through the atmosphere in a literal sense. So they would expect and have expected and have thought that was a meteorite. And yes, Carol B, I've always wondered whether or not the same one came back as was taken. It's always kind of amused me the idea that someone came and took the stone and smashed it and threw it in through a latrine. But we totally have the real one. We totally kept track of it. Here it is. So uh, the idea that they are confident that it's the same one is pretty interesting to me. So anyway, the Muslim legends state that the Kaaba stone is one of the stars of paradise and a hyacinth that turned black through the touch of an uh, uh, impious woman. As a color, a hyacinth pertains to a blue-gray hue, and they're being polite here. By impious, they mean that she's menstruating, and menstruating women are so filthy they turn things black when they touch them if they're too pure, right? Anyway, uh, as a color, hyacinth pertains to a bluish blue-red hue of medium saturation and brilliance. In modern gemology, a hyacinth is a reddish-brown variety of zircon or essonite garnet. To the ancients, to whom color and luster were more important than meteorological composition, a hyacinth apparently was just a blue stone. For some reason, it clipped the rest of that. I don't know. I'm special. Another article, this was a totally different article, said secular historians point to the history of stone worship, especially meteorite worship in pre-Islamic Arabia, and say that it was likely that the stone's meteorite. There is no way to test this hypothesis without removing and examining the stone, although they did do non-destructive methods, and those methods showed no indication that it was a meteorite, by the way, which would not be permitted by its guardians. So it has been tested in non-destructive ways, and it's not a meteorite.
Yeah, and to be clear, I would not expect the Muslims to allow it to be put under destructive
No, no,
testing. So that's
I'm not.
perfectly reasonable.
I'm not criticizing them for that. That would be silly to do if you actually believed that this came from Jinnah. You would not allow people to, like, take more parts of it and break more parts of it, right? So, and yes, we do know of pagan meteorite stones that were worshipped, and we'll get to them later. But it's kind of funny that it was non-Muslims who are like, yeah, this has to be a meteorite, and the Muslims were like, yeah, it has to because it passed through the atmosphere, so it must be a meteorite, right? Um, and so there was a letter written by, and it's a scholar from Saudi Arabia in response to inquiries, and these are, and rather than a translation, the editors of this article, rather than like a sentence by sentence translation or word for word, just gave the sense of it. And he said that he gave a list of 8th and 9th century Muslim scholars who confirmed the truth of the origin of the Black Stone. They include such writers as al-Tirmidhi, who, etc., and al-Nasa'i, authors of the 2 of 6 canonical collections of ahadith, right? And so they're doubling down on the fact that that's Jannah, and Jannah is not the same thing as sky or heaven, so it doesn't have to come through the atmosphere, but they just don't understand the cosmology. They all call the black stone a gem, literally a sapphire. That's the hyacinth word, right, from heaven. They do disagree on the time that it came to earth. This is interesting. He says that one states it arrived with Adam, another relates it had been on earth 40 years when Abraham moved it from a mountain to the Kaaba. Still another say that the angel Gabriel brought it to Abraham at the time he was building the Kaaba. And there are ways of fitting some of these together, but not all of them, which is quite interesting. This confusion as to when it came, right? And the change of color, here are the 2 different accounts of the change of color, at least two accounts, one each of each version, right? So it was a white jewel that Adam took out of paradise and used to wipe his tears. For after he left paradise, his tears did not stop for 2,000 years until he returned to it, and Iblis was no longer able to do anything to him. And I said to him, Abu al-Hajjaj, why and how did it turn black? He replied, menstruating women were touching it in the Jahiliyyah, which is a time of ignorance, right? in ignorance, in the and it's not just it usually gets translated as time, but it means those who are in the state of ignorance, essentially, right? Then the other version is that it was blackened by the sins of the children of Adam. So sins and menstruating women are put on the same level here. They can blacken something pure with their disgustingness both. This was a particularly funny thing that I ran across while I was looking at this. This is on Suna.com's official Facebook page, part of a really long, and there's the reference down there. I will make this available later, so you can go and look at it yourself. But this is clipped from their official Facebook page, talking about various things about the black stone. So, sins made it turn black. This should be taken at face value because there's no reason not to, either narrated in a report or by virtue of common sense. Someone else says, some heretics tried to criticize this hadith by saying, how come the sins of the mushrikeen turned it black? Notice the sins of the mushrikeen, of the people who are not Muslims. So it takes away your sins if you touch it, but apparently it was also taking away the sins of the mushrikeen because it turned black whenever they touched it. But anyway, how come the sins of the mushrikeen turned it black? And the worship of the people of Tawheed did not make it white. Wait. The worship of the people of Tawheed did not make it white. To whom was the worship oriented? The worship is oriented toward the black stone. You're bowing toward the black stone. You're bowing at it every single time you bow and pray. You must be oriented at the black stone, guys. Right? And so this worship, this purifying worship, should have turned it white, right? And then this person answered by quoting someone else, if Allah had willed, that would have happened. But Allah has caused it to be the case that black usually changes other colors and is not itself changed, which is the opposite to what happens with white. And the answer is because it's black, right? And that's kind of funny because that would mean that if you were pure and you touch it, then you should be blackened or sinful or something, right? So, do you have anything to read right now? Because I need to yawn.
Yeah, no problem. So we have Muslim in the comments here. Ali saying Muslims don't accept Nasai. We only accept Muslim and Bukhari. He seems to not know anything about Hadith grading. He doesn't have any clue what canonical sources
No.
are. He doesn't know that there are Hadith outside of canonical collections that are accepted,
Mm-hmm.
that each individual Hadith is independently graded. But I said, no problem. Keep telling us about all the lies that Muslims made up, all the horrible, horrific things that Muslims made up, and how this makes your religion true. That everyone was making up their own hadith, making up lies about Muhammad. Everyone was lying all the time about everything. Come to Islam, the religion of truth.
Yeah, that's so funny. Apparently, according to Islam is My Identity, Sunnah.com's official writers are very ignorant of Islamic teaching because I'm reading this, and that is ignorant. So
Yeah, that's
go ahead and
amazing.
talk
Yeah,
here though, because they're ignorant.
Mary's so ignorant, and you quite literally read Islamic source, and he calls it ignorant because you read it.
Oh,
Interesting.
by the way, uh, our buddy there, the new guy, he does not
Ollie?
know how to write Nasai either. Like they just wrote it wrong in here because they're not, they're just putting in English and they're geologists for heaven's sake, so they're not going to transcribe it correctly. But
So,
he also transcribed it wrong, which is pretty funny.
Ollie, we don't tolerate off-topic chat. You have been warned. If you continue to spam off-topic chat, you will be put in timeout.
All right, so the fact that it is black, so this is Al Tabari said, the fact that it is black is a lesson for those who have insight. Yes, we always have a lesson for those who are knowledgeable, right? Those of knowledge, right? Um, so if sins can have this effect on an inanimate rock, then the effect that they have on the heart is greater. So I'm still interested in the idea of this rock to which you touch And then blackness transfers things that are white to blackness. Therefore, any pure person touching it ought to pick up more sins, according to this reasoning. But whatever, it's fine. And at the very end, this one just made me giggle, so I had to include it, guys. Sorry. It says it is not permissible for a Muslim to annoy other Muslims by the stone by hitting or fighting. Because there are like brawls at the stone fairly frequently, right? The prophet told us that the stone will testify in favor of those who touched it in sincerity, which is not the case if a person touches it by disturbing the slaves of Allah. So if you punch or trample someone to touch the stone, you don't get its benefits. So stop having brawls out there, okay? I just love it. So it's called a blue jewel, but it's also called explicitly white. Both mean that it can't possibly be a meteorite because meteorites aren't either of these things. The blackness, however, appears to be actual filth, like filth that you could scrub off if you tried. So here is from the same one. As for the red measurements of the mass, one writer who saw it delineated it, say he had studied it while it had been pulled out of the wall. The blackness is on the top only, with the remainder being white. Its length is 1 cubit. And so that was written in 317 AH. So it was stolen a little bit before then, like what was it, 19, nearly 20 years before then. So it was someone who had seen it before it got stolen. So it's put in the wall, and all the rest of it's light colored. But the part that people have touched is black because their hands are oily and disgusting and dirt and grime and like if you have seen, for instance, banister, like a railing, rather, that was painted white, and nobody's ever washed it, and people put their hands on it as they walk downstairs after a number of years, it turns gray, and then like the low spots turn kind of black. Yeah, yeah. So it's not a black stone. It's just a really dirty stone, and there aren't sins. It's just dirty hands. So it's a dirty stone.
Yep. So
And yeah,
a couple quick comments. I thought that you were at a pause, but there.
that's
So first from Ahu, you will all die for your religions and crossbreeding cursed bloodlines to populate a world of one mass race. I have no idea what you're talking about, but I would suggest you get off the hallucinogenic drugs. They are not helping you. Not at all. Good comment here from Ben. If the Muslims were real monotheists, they would have destroyed the Kaaba shrine.
I would agree with that. But they weren't. And we will eventually get to why that was. Why was Muhammad not a monotheist? Why was it impossible for him to be a monotheist? So,
And we have a super chat from Nick's Highlander.
Early, and this is indeed a sign, yet most of them are not believers. Give alone to Allah, give alone to Allah. Ride the wings of Gabriel, give alone to Allah.
Yeah, I commented earlier that Allah needed a loan, and Nix has stepped up and provided that. I believe that I owe you a super chat from last time, so I'll bring this back up later and get another one of those clips. Guru says, I've seen them pushing and women get groped, so during the Hajj, and absolutely.
okay.
I've seen.
Yeah, I was going to talk specifically. So the pushing is because they all want to kiss the stone and be up close and get more
Mhm.
benefits. The groping is because they're taught that whenever you go around the Kaaba and you do this, you're like a newborn babe, and all your sins are taken away from you. So that means that you can get away with doing horrible things to women there because you're getting refreshed as it is. There are all kind before you go to on Hajj to Mecca. If you're in like a big tour group and if you make the your usually you go through an organizer, right? And that organizer gives the people who are going guidelines. And they say, for instance, never let a woman get into the cab first in Mecca. If a woman gets into a cab first before you do, there's a very good chance that that taxi driver is going to take off, drive her out into the desert. He and his buddies are going to rape her, bring her back, and dump her there because he can always do a little Haji trip right around the Kaaba and get his get refreshed like a newborn babe. And this is a huge problem. Huge numbers of women, vast numbers of women are sexually molested at the Kaaba with men grabbing and groping and tweaking them. Because again, you get all your sins erased. It is a massive place of exploitation of women. It is horrific. So yes, that is absolutely true. It's a very common occurrence.
Another comment here from A. Are Christians really this gullible? Well, we're not gullible enough to believe the sources that we're reading, if that's what you mean. Unfortunately for you, these are authentic Islamic sources that we're reading. So maybe it is you who is gullible for believing them in the first place. Don't know. And then finally, from Ali Shah, is there a way I can join you guys live too? We will open it up to callers after the presentation. And you're welcome to join then, as well as anyone else is as well.
Yep. All right. So he was among those. So another writer saw it during a remodeling of the Kaaba at the time of Sultan Murad and 1040 AH. He said that measures much bigger with their missing very spots missing, and he also mentions that it had a bracelet of silver at that time. He didn't seem to realize that at that point it was pieced back together. So in the second one, it was multiple pieces embedded in wax, and he seems not to know it. Some historians and religious scholars who went on Hajj to Mecca say that they saw traces of the whiteness. One saw a white dot visible of all, another saw three white spots, the largest being the size of a grain seed. A third said that the amount of white is decreasing. Now, what would happen is that anytime you touched it and a little hunk came off of it, it would reveal white again until you got it really dirty again. So that's how you would get all this whiteness. Uh, so the historian Muhammad ibn Afi al-Khazi had seen the stone completely exposed during the rebuilding and stated that the portion of the stone covered by the wall is white as well. So it just appears to be a very, very dirty stone, guys, not actually black. Because remember, if you touched it and it made that and your sins made it black, then the whole thing would be it's just dirt. You could just scrub it. It's just dirt. But it's called the black stone, so you can't scrub it because it won't be black anymore. Uh, so the black stone went missing because you're supposed to believe that it was put in there by Abraham. However, there was a time when the Kaaba existed and there was no stone in it. It was missing between Adam and Abraham. It was gone, but then it was also missing, even according to the Islamic sources, so at some point after either Banu Jurhum or Banu Iyad were the keepers of the Kaaba. Right? The early oral history of the Kaaba is really confused, and so uh, there are conflicting reports about who controlled it before the. So there's Muhammad's tribe, and then there's a tribe before, and then the tribe before that. It's really confused by the time you get to the tribe before that, right? So now, and then of course it went missing again, long in 198 years after the Hijra, whenever it was stolen, and then it was missing a third time, but even according to Islamic sources, right? But here is the first way in which, according to one story, that was missing. So the Huza'a, or Huza'a, there we go. That's slightly better, but still terrible. So they took control over the Mecca from the Yad, right? And there was a battle and there were conditions, and then the people who got kicked out decided to leave, but they decided not to take this wonderful precious stone with them, but they also decided not uh, to leave it at the Kaaba. They just decided to take it, right? So yes, people stole it for 20 years, but we're talking way before then. This is before Muhammad was born. So we're not talking about the time that the Qadmatians came and stole it, right? We're talking about the time before Muhammad, that shortly, as his people are taking over the Kaaba and Mecca, it was missing for a while and had been found. Okay. So supposedly a particular woman saw them hide it and dig it up and bury it and told the Khuzaka, goodness, Khuzaka, I'm doing terribly. It's a really hard word. Sorry. The that actually means the scattered ones. So it's not even proper uh, title of a tribe. But anyway, the scattered ones told them where it was buried, and they unburied it and stuck it back in the wall. Right. Then another story says that was buried by the Ayad again, and then found by Jose. Now, if Jose found it, that is the first. That is the founder of the Quraysh, or the Qurayshi, right? So the Quraysh came with, they're supposed to be the descendants of Qusay and his close relatives, whom he all gathered there. And Quraysh just means gathered ones. So they called the people before them scattered ones after they called themselves gathered ones, very obviously. It really smacks of legendary material to have names like this. But anyway, supposedly, and this, I found this in the Priest and the Prophet by Ozzy, but he almost always cites from actual sources. He just didn't footnote this one, and I haven't been able to find it yet. So we don't even know who it was buried shortly. A few like 200 years before Muhammad, it was buried, and it was uncovered and found buried and put in the Kaaba then, and had not previously been in the Kaaba. Now, what I personally believe is that it was first introduced to the Kaaba at this time, that it had not ever existed before in the Kaaba. The Kaaba was a pagan shrine, it had various things, and this was part of the collecting of 360 idols, and this was one of the idols that was located to put in there. So it's not so, it probably is a special looking stone when it's not all filthy. It probably does look pretty cool whenever it's not dirty and it's white, because a lot of these stones that people worship were like cool looking stones. So now,
Yeah, and I'll just
go
add
ahead.
real quick that just because it was buried doesn't mean it couldn't be a meteorite, especially if it was a meteorite from prehistoric times. It definitely could have been found buried, and I'm sure it wasn't an ordinary stone because they picked it for a reason. It looked
Yeah.
special in some way.
So, and I don't think that it was really buried. I think that they found it like sticking out of the ground. They're like, oh, this is a cool stone. We need to take it. Because that's really what these people did. They found cool stones, and they considered a special stone. Well, we're about to go into that now, all the things that stones were used for. Okay. So this is a particular set of standing stones that are in Yemen, and the Tehama is an area, a district of Yemen. So you can see all of these standing stones that people set up there as part of religious ritual. So this was from these particular ones were put in 2400 to 1800 BC in Yemen. And this is a slightly different phenomenon because these aren't like, obviously, if you have an entire line of standing stones, they aren't for circumambulation 7 times and everything else. They're not for that particular type of adoration that you'd have with a singular stone or even with a group of stones very close together. But the reason why stones are used is because they were useful for a lot of things, and they were actually used by many different cultures. Tons of cultures have stones that you would set up to mark something. But in Arabia, they took special extra significance that just setting up a stone somewhere did not take in other places. So, one of the things that they were used for in Arabia and tons of other places is a boundary marker. Like, this is a place where one person's boundary begins and one person's boundary starts. They were used as boundary markers like into the modern era in lots of places because stones don't rot, right? So you'd use a stone after you've mapped out where things are, and they're called monuments in surveying. And you can even find stone monuments now in different parts of the U.S. from the 19th century. So boundary markers, stone is very handy for that. And if you're pre-literate, you take a funky looking stone so everybody would know that's the end of this field, that's the end of someone's territory, that kind of thing. You would also use them as way markers to remind you of the direction and the way of things. Bedouins still make stacks of stones and set up individual stones as waymarkers in Arabia. You can go, you'll find archaeological such and such, and they're like, yes, there's some stones here, but these stones aren't significant. They're just a Bedouin waymarker, and that was made, that they're not any kind of worship anything. They're just a waymarker. So this is something that still happens. They are also used as covenant markers. So that means that you do it. Two important people make an agreement, and after you make the agreement, you set up a stone to mark the fact that you have made that agreement. So you are both witnesses, and the stone itself is a witness to the agreement that you've made. So anytime anybody passes by there, they can remember the agreement that was made in a pre-literate time, or someone else can go, hey, what is that for? And then that goes, oh, this is for such and such. And then that way you can remember covenants over a long period of time, and nobody can say, oh, I didn't hear that we made that agreement. It can also be an ownership marker. When you take over an area, if you erect a stone, you can be basically saying, this area is mine. They can also be grave markers. That was very common. If someone died, then, we have headstones. Right now, we have headstones. Headstones are not a direct descendant of this because it happened independently, but stone is a very handy material to mark graves with. You can also have a marker as a particular event. And steles are a descendant of the tradition of using markers to mark an event. A covenant would be a type of event, it'd be a subtype of event. Steles were unlike standing stones in that they're carved and shaped, and you put so and so came here. This is Sargon of Akkad, the guy I talked about last time, the supposed first empire builder ever, which is really just incredibly good propaganda because he wasn't. But, that's his stele declaring how wonderful he is and how awesome he is, and everybody better listen to him, and look at how far I've come and conquered. So, like, at the edge of his conquest zone, he had this set up with some words carved in it so everybody would know. And steles are kind of a branch off of standing stones in a particular direction. And you can find steles in all kinds of cultures. China has a whole bunch of steles to mark important conquests and events and things like that too.
I'm glad
So
you I'm glad you were the one who was responsible for saying that word because I never knew how it was pronounced properly. I knew what it was, but I had only ever read it and not heard it. Eddie wants to know if this black stone belongs to a sorcerer or has anything to do with Harry Potter.
ha, nice,
And
nice.
So you says, "Kiss the black stone and it will take away all your senses." I like that. Nice play on words there.
Mm-hmm. All right, and then it can also be a divine occupation marker. So you've had an encounter with the divine, therefore it's an important event, and so it's tied to the event marker thing. So you set up a stone going, hey, a God's been here. This is an important place. Let's not forget it. It can also be a stand in as a witness. And again, that kind of ties into the covenant marker. You've made an agreement. Now you set this thing up, and this is a reminder of that thing. So if something happens, and you can use it as a reminder, and so it can be a stand in witness in that way, right? It can also, but from this in Arabia, especially, right, it became a localizer of divinity, and also later on a house for the soul, even a human soul, so that human souls can once again come out of their dwelling essentially and interact in some way and still know what's going on in earth by having a special stone for them, because human souls are they are incorporeal spirits, right? Once they're separated from a body. And so the idea is that if you can localize a god that way, should also be able to localize it for the occupation of a human soul. And so this it's the localizer of divinity that makes it a an idol. So you stand it up. It's a special stone. It's a really unique thing from that place. And so the divinity of that place can be called into it, made to occupy it, invoked by it. It has power its because it's a good stone essentially, right? And that is how it is used as an idol. Every single other use of a vertical standing stone is entirely, except for that and House of Soul, like you think that somebody's soul can occupy it. Every other use is fine. But if it's a localizer of divinity, it then becomes an idol. How do you know if it's a localizer of divinity? Well, if you can specially access your God through it, it's a localizer of divinity and it's an idol. Period. That's it. So what the Blackstone does, it is a localizer of Allah's power, and it uniquely, when you touch it or point to it, if you can't touch it, reach it, right? It takes away your sins uniquely, and therefore it is an idol. These people did not think that their gods were actual stones. They thought that this was essentially a way of harnessing the power of the god. And that is exactly what the Blackstone is, guys. It is, in every respect, an idol of Allah. Now, here are a whole bunch of times that these are used, that the word for a standing stone is used in the Bible. And most of these uses are early on are quite legitimate. For example, there's a heap of witness. That's a covenant marker. That's fine. And it was not even just one stone. This is several standing stones and then a pile of stones. So we're all here. Each one of us is going to throw a stone on, and they're all going to be witnesses of this covenant we just made. That's the first one. Second one, we have the pillar of Bethel, right? And so he was sleeping on a stone and he turned it upright and made it into a pillar, poured oil on it, because this is a marker of a time, a marker of an encounter with divinity. So something special happened here. This is an event that he chooses to remember. And so anytime someone sees it, they'll go, that is where God came and encountered Jacob in a special way.
Sorry for laughing there, but I don't know if this is a serious comment or a joke or whatever. But 5633 says that I've converted to Islam.
You,
Don't know why he thinks that, but like I said, he just showed up. I don't know if he's a Muslim. I don't know if it's a joke, but that's one of the stupidest comments I've ever seen in my life.
well, he
So
thought that
if
was
that's
just really clear camel urine that you were drinking just now.
yeah, I guess we do, however, have a comment from an actual Muslim here. Bored Alchemist says the stone was kissed to take away sins. But he
Yes,
says
that's
that's
the
not a
point.
right. He said that's not a problem because going on the Hajj also takes away your sin. Is the Hajj an idol? Yes, it
You,
is. Bored Alchemist.
yes,
Thanks for helping us out.
you are going to a pagan temple. So yes, you are going to a pagan temple where Allah is localized and his power is localized. That is exactly the same as it has always been. There is no distinction between this temple of Allah and other temples that are devoted to a single pagan god, because there are plenty of other temples that are devoted to a single pagan god. There is no difference in the kinds of things they did there and the kinds of things that people did in other places, right? So there's another one. He talks about how and Bethel is significant. There are a whole bunch of places in Genesis where God goes around and basically dunks on previously pagan sites by saying, no, I am the God of the site. No, I am the God of the site. No, I am the only God, and I am the God of every single place that anyone thinks is sacred. This is my place. This is mine. This does not belong to these demons that you guys want to worship or these nothings that you want to worship. It's mine. And so Bethel is one of many places. It just happens to be the only place where a pillar stood up. And it's really quite remarkable because whenever you go to Neolithic sites where there was lots of Neolithic pagan activity, almost every single one of those sites in the Levant ends up being explicitly mentioned in Genesis thousands of years later as a place that God is basically saying, no, this does not belong to these pagan deities. This is mine instead. So
Yep,
anyway,
so I'm going to interrupt you real quick here. Bored Alchemist says that we are lying in desperation. Bored Alchemist, the next comment you make in the chat better be a specific lie that we have told, or you will be put in time out. Do you understand? because we have not said anything that is false. We most of what we said doesn't even shouldn't even be offensive to Muslims. It is the material that your sources say. It's what Orthodox Muslims believe, and you are not paying any attention. You're just spamming the chat saying we're lying. You don't even know what we've said. You're probably not even hearing me talk right now because you're afraid of the truth.
All right. So then there's some more things about that particular marker at Bethel. There's also Rachel. Also, there was a pillar put over Rachel's tomb so that people wouldn't forget where it was. Totally legitimate. Now, notice what he didn't do. Jacob did not, after he poured oil, he did not bow to the 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 stone. He just poured oil over it. He did not bow to it. He did not say, "Oh, I will worship the stone as or bow to the stone because I can get special powers from Yahweh through it." No, because that would have been pagan. This isn't. This is marking a spot where something important happened by choosing a a stone that he happened to be near when this happened and going, "Hey, I need to remember this. We all need to remember this." Um, then Moses put up uh, 12 pillars for the 12 tribes of Israel around an altar at the base of the mountain. That's the mountain of Sinai. Now, these 12 pillars are stand-in witnesses. So it is to memorialize the time that the covenant was made. And so anytime they came back there and saw the 12 stones, they would remember that the 12 tribes were at that time in this new covenant with God that had just emerged, right? So this is the sort of thing that was legitimate, right? And even after Moses, and this is right whenever, Moses is getting all these instructions from Yahweh about how to worship him and how not, et cetera, right? And then a long time later, Samuel, for you Muslims who don't know, Samuel was the last of the well, he was a high priest, but he was in the last time of the judges. So after Samuel, there were no more rule by judges because he anointed the first king. So he was, a couple 100 years or so, or he was several generations. Let's just say several generations, because I don't want to get into debates, but several generations after the time of Moses, and he is the high priest, and he is setting up a stone called Ebenezer, which is the stone of witness, is what it means. Till now, the Lord has helped us, he said. So this is a witness to all that God has done for them. That's also legitimate, right?
So while on the subject of Moses,
Mm-hmm.
John has a question. Where's the stone that ran away with Moses' clothes? You thought they'd kept that one. I would think so too. That's a pretty important stone there. But apparently, after Moses beat it with a stick to get his clothes back, they just left the stone there. Shame. Could have been the miraculous proof of Islam, stones that move on their own, but sadly, they didn't think to keep it. And 5633 says the Kaaba is just a mosque, which is quite remarkable because I've never in my life heard any Muslim claim it is a mosque. And this is the guy who wants to debate me so that he can prove that Islam is the truth and I convert to Islam. I'm looking forward to you emailing me for that debate, 5633, since you apparently know absolutely nothing about Islam. Should be a very easy debate.
So he's also, it is called Masjid al-Haram, but it's not like other mosques. It is the shrine of which the other ones are an imitation. What was a masjid at the time of Muhammad? It was a pagan site. There were thousands and thousands of, well, probably by this point only hundreds, but hundreds of masjid all around the place, and it is a pagan site where people bow down and prostrated. According to Muhammad himself, bowing to anything or anyone constitutes worship. That is worship. So If
Yeah,
you are
so
bowing to the stone, you are worshiping it according to Mohammed. I'm not taking my standards of worship and applying them to Islam. I'm taking Muhammad's own standards. What constitutes worship? He said that if he had ordered anyone to bow, and it's called sujood, right? To do that to anyone else, he would have told wives to do that to their husbands because Allah likes wives or likes husbands so much, men so much more than women because they're just way better. And if a husband tells a wife to take a black stone to a white mountain or a white stone to a black mountain, then she's obligated to do it. Even though this is a foolish and pointless task that's exhausting, wives are obligated to do this because their husbands are so much better and Allah likes them so much more. But he does not ask women to prostrate to their husbands because prostration constitutes worship. So this is Muhammad's standards of worship. If you're going to say that Muhammad is wrong about what worship is, that's fine. You're the one who has to explain the fact that Muhammad doesn't know what worship is, not me. So anyway, here's another one that is a pillar that signifies ownership, right? Whenever you're passing from a border to another into someone's land. This one says there'll be an altar to the Lord in the center of the land of Egypt and a pillar to the Lord near the border. And that's what's meant there, is that this is a place of that it will belong to God. Now, in contrast to these valid uses of pillars, there are pillars to whom people bow. And a lot of times they are listed along with ashram, which were poles or stripped tree trunks, because people did very commonly previously like worship around actual trees, which were pretty rare there. Like, so if you had an area of big trees, and it would become a site to worship the mother goddess usually, right? And so the ashram, which were just dead poles that would be planted in the ground as if they were trees, kind of, they would be put together with the pillars as places of worshiping um, pagan gods, because they believed that they could localize the power of the gods and use those pillars and the ashram to get the power of those gods on their side and control them and manipulate them and beseech them for things, right? Make this a little bit bigger so that my body is not on the word. So you guys can pause this later and read everything. I'm not going to read it all, but basically what they were commanded to do, the Israelites, when they came in, is to tear down all of the pillars, all of these pagan pillars that people worshipped and circled and bowed down to. The Israelites were supposed to destroy and chop down all the Asherim, right? And then and you are not to bow down to their gods or serve them as they do. So again, they're bowing down to them. You don't do that, but you break them into pieces instead. And then whenever it talks about the evil things that kings did later, it involved doing what? Building high places and pillars and ashram. So the same word, right? So and some of the Asherah are trees, some of them are just poles. It depends on whether or not you have enough water for it, right? And then here are a whole bunch of other instances of breaking pillars, cutting down Asherim, and then building them and letting people do that, and all of those sorts of things. So you can, again, pause this and read all of these verses about this forbidden act, which constitutes idolatry. Okay? So again, and then the obelisk of Heliopolis, again, that's just pillars, right? Um, in the Hebrews, pillars. Uh, so
So we have
you have,
a
oh, yep.
vigorous rebuttal here from Islam is My Identity. We don't worship the Kaaba or stone, but pagan worshipers worship idols like Christians worship Jesus. So I know you're very confused. I know you're very, very confused here. Islam is My Identity. But telling us that we worship Jesus, not news to us, right? Jesus is God. He deserves our worship. Interestingly, it's Muslims who are constantly telling us that Jesus supposedly refused worship, that he didn't, or that he wasn't worshipped. And then you tell us that we do worship him, and we do that because that is what the Bible commands us to do. Meanwhile, you worship the Kaaba and or the black stone, You claim you don't. You say you don't with your mouth, but your actions indicate otherwise. In fact, as Mary pointed out, Muhammad's own standard indicates otherwise. If anyone of any other religion was doing the same actions that Muslims do, you would say they are worshiping. And if they claimed they don't, if they claimed that they don't, you would say your actions speak louder than your words. You clearly worship that idol that you're bowing down to. Why the Christian worship to a man? Because Jesus is not just a man, he is God incarnate. Do you know anything about Christian beliefs at all? Or are
No,
you just
probably
playing
not.
games and trying to distract because you are so incredibly embarrassed by your black stone? Tell me which one it is.
So Christians worship one God in being, who is the one God in being, has three centers of consciousness, which we call persons. It's that simple, guys. And our one God is more truly one truly simple, without parts, without pieces, without everything else that your guy's God has, who's put together like a Lego man. So every piece of your God should be a distinct deity, which then disqualifies Allah from being divine. That is true of every single Sunni out there. None of you worship that which can be God, which is why Sunnism tends to disallow any sort of philosophy, because it quickly shows how completely impossible Allah is and how unsuitable to being divine Allah is. But anyway, here are more things about breaking down pillars. Here's an interesting one, that uh, the children of Israel should dwell many days without king or prince. This is after they've been unfaithful, right? Without sacrifice or pillar, without ephod or household gods. So pillars are also associated with household gods and with illegitimate ephods and illegitimate sacrifices, right? And we have uh, cut off your carved images and your pillars. So a carved image is together with a pillar as an idol. It's not just images, carved images and pillars and Asherahs. They're all idols, guys, not just the ones that have faces. Muhammad wanted to pretend that it was just faces because he wanted to avoid the implications of what was actually taught, because he wanted to continue pagan practices, genuinely, anciently pagan and only pagan. Okay? Remember that according to Muhammad's tellings, from the time of Abraham onward, all the way continuously until Muhammad, right? The Kaaba was supposed to be a site of monotheistic people going and worshiping, etc. Please find me one instance where any Jew or Israelite ever referenced the Black Stone or Mecca or any place like that, like a place they go to worship Yahweh. It does not exist. This is strictly pagan. This is anciently strictly pagan. All right, so we're going to do a tiny bit of Hebrew work here. So the pillar standing stone is its own word, masebah, right? And it's never used about God. God is never called this standing stone. At best, a standing stone is a marker, and it can be legitimate as that, but a lot of times it's an idol. God is never referred to by this word, period. A very large rock or an entire cliff face or rocky mountain in its natural environment is called a tsur or a sur. And this is the word that whenever you say that the Lord is my rock, the Lord is my fortress, the Lord is this, the Lord is that, and it's talking about rock, this is the word that's usually used. And very interestingly, tur, got brought into um, Arabic through the Quran as Tur, right? And that's the name that was given to Mount Sinai for some random reason. It was just kind of given uh, this borrowed name, or a form of this borrowed name that was slightly garbled. Okay, and this is what's usually used. And the statements about God are that there is no other one besides God who is like him. He is the only true mountain. And this has to do with the idea that the best play, or the place mentally where you associate with the heavenly, with the things above, is a high mountain. And so, metaphorically, you get the name rock, rocky outcrop, cliff face for God from that, right? A stone that you can pick up is an ebon, and so it is rarely used of deity. Two of the few instances are very interesting. Every Christian will know what this refers to. So in Isaiah 8, verse 11, we find, "For thus the Lord spoke to me with a strong hand upon me and warned me not to walk in the way of the people, saying, do not call conspiracy all that this people calls conspiracy, and do not fear what they fear, nor be in dread. But the Lord of hosts, him shall you honor as holy. Let him be your fear, and let him be your dread. And he will become a sanctuary and a stone of offense and a rock of stumbling," and that's that other word rock, right? "A stone of offense and a rock of stumbling to both houses of Israel, a trap and a snare to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. And many shall stumble on it, they shall fall and be broken, they shall be snared and taken." Now, who can tell us who this is actually referring to? Who is the rejected stone that was the stone of stumbling that became the cornerstone? And I'll give them a few seconds because they're behind.
Yeah. So why they're thinking about that, and I'm sure people will know the answer, but
Yep,
just
yep.
why
And so
they.
here's another place. Uh, so here is another place where uh, Jacob is giving his blessings to all of his sons and grandsons, right before he dies. And he says to Joseph, "Joseph is a fruitful bough by a spring. His branches run over the wall. The archers bitterly attacked him, shot at him, and harassed him severely, yet his bow remained unmoved. His arms were made agile by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob. From there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel." So, from the mighty one of Jacob is the shepherd and the stone of Israel. So again, who is, thank you, Sonny, the Lord Jesus Christ, right? Jesus Christ became the cornerstone now that we've caught up. um,
Yeah.
yeah, because I don't want to like sit in silence for 20 seconds while I'm waiting for everybody to hear me.
Well, I was
Right?
gonna read. I was like, why? While we're waiting, and then you
Yep.
just like kept
Sorry.
going. So I was gonna read some audience comments, but no worries, no worries.
So yes, and notice that because of this passage about Joseph, even though it says in the same thing, it says that the scepter will not depart from Judah until Shiloh comes, right? It's in the same whole, there are all these prophecies about Judah being king forever, etc. There's also interesting special prophecies about Joseph. And those interesting special prophecies about Joseph are fulfilled not through the tribe of Joseph, but through a singular Joseph who was credited as the father of Jesus Christ. And again, the stone of Israel is Jesus. He is the cornerstone. This is a different word again than the pillar and standing stone. So, no, the cornerstones are never used that way. Go ahead and read your comments.
Well, I was just gonna
Yep.
read a couple comments to
Oh,
kill
you're just going
time.
to find some?
Not that we
Right.
urgently needed to answer a comment or anything.
So there's also an important bit in that the word for cornerstone uh, in Hebrew is actually just, we say cornerstone, but it can be used of a generic corner of a building or a wall or corner of an object. It's also figuratively the chiefs of people. So rather than saying that he's the head of the people of such and such, you might say he is the corner of the people of such and such, like the most important person, right? It's also used as a street corner. That's kind of interesting to speakers of foreign languages where there's a distinction sometimes between those. But
Uh,
so
yeah, so I
go ahead.
do have an actual interesting question here
Mhm.
from David YouTube. Has anyone addressed Joshua 7:6, bowing before the Ark of the Covenant? would like to hear your thoughts on it. I have the passage if you want me to pull it up, or if you have thoughts off the top of your head, that's
Oh,
fine as
go ahead
well.
and pull it up.
Alrighty.
I'm also going to run off for a second while you read it, if you don't mind.
Yep,
Hopefully, I'll be able to hear.
we will do that. All right, so I got the passage up here. So there's Israel has just been defeated in battle, and then we come to the relevant verse. Then Joshua tore his clothes and fell to the earth on his face before the ark of Yahweh until the evening, he and the elders of Israel. And they put dust on their heads. And Joshua said, Alas, O Lord Yahweh, why have you brought this people over to the Jordan at all, to give them into the hands of the Amorites, to destroy us? Would that we had been content to dwell beyond the Jordan. O Lord, what can I say when Israel has turned their backs before the enemies? For the Canaanites and all the inhabitants of the land will hear of it, and will surround us, and cut off our name from the earth. And what will you do for your great name? Now, I purposely read the parts that are Yahweh with the divine name as opposed to reading the all caps version of them because I think it provides you the answer to this question. Why does he bow down to or before the Ark of the Covenant, right? And that's because the ark is supposed to be the literal presence of God on earth. It's not about the box, it's about God being there, which is why all of his comments are addressed not just to the generic term God, but to Yahweh, the divine name. So why does he perform this action? And it's because he is looking at the box and saying that God is there, and he's posing his questions to God. The box itself has nothing to do with it.
God
Anything you want
had
to add?
set, yeah. So God had directed the construction of the ark, and the sacrifices were performed before it. On top of the ark, there is the mercy seat, which is empty. So God has chosen to use that as his way to connect with people. It's not an actual, it's the empty seat to which they are actually bowing. The seat that has nothing on it. It is a seat and it's empty because God cannot be contained. God has chosen to condescend and to make the proper place to go to him there, and that was to prevent all the sorts of alternative activities like setting up pillars and going, we can totally like bow to these pillars, that's totally fine. As soon as people were allowed in this context to have that kind of freedom, they immediately started, maybe we should add this second thing, and maybe this pillar forces God to be here. This is God saying that no, I have no image to which you can bow. This empty space where I have chosen to make my connection with you, you can supplicate to me, especially there, because you can only bring certain sacrifices there, right? You can't bring them other places. And it is an inversion of what the pagans do. What the pagans do is they localize and control God. What God is doing is saying, no, I cannot be contained. I choose to make my home here, and no other place is my home made. There is nothing in the world that would ever prevent a pagan from making extra pieces of, extra pillars, extra idols, extra whatever, and localize God to other places. By doing this and being entirely intangible there, God is saying, no, my terms, not your terms. You have to do it the way I say. So that's what's going on there.
Absolutely. And one other unrelated question here, or yeah, it's a question. I noticed the same Muslims in the chat, never addressing the topics, never defending Islam. Why is that? And I think the answer is pretty obvious. That's because they can't. They can only hope to distract. They have no answers for the material being offered. They can only do one of two things. They can either bring up something in Christianity and try to get the topic changed, or they can just leave empty rhetoric like you're lying, you have no clue what you're talking about. Oh, really? Can you give a specific answer? Of course they can't because they're just leaving empty rhetoric. They're not paying attention.
Yeah, and rose petal is actually exactly right here. The tabernacle is like Jesus. In fact, the Greek word used to translate tabernacle is used for Jesus' incarnation, that he came and tabernacled with us. So this is an early image of what Jesus would do when he came to rectify the sin that separated us from God. Okay? So the entire uh, the temple, as God took it, and as God insisted upon it being service, being served through it, and everything else, is a foreshadowing of Christ coming, becoming the new temple, the new cornerstone, tabernacling with us, and then dying, rising from the dead, and now the new temple is Christ. So whenever you go into the later stuff and it talks about, bringing things to Jerusalem, what that means is that we bring our sacrifices of praise to Christ is what it means. And as well as, the alms that we do give the church, but also our obedience is our sacrifice as well, right? So that's what's going on now.
And just one other humorous comment before we move on from Manesh. I want to go to McDonald's now.
Nice.
Yeah, will you get a double cheeseburger there, perhaps? Make sure you don't get any of those ribs, though. Those are definitely halal.
All right. So again, in this, of course, is referenced again in the New Testament to Jesus. Uh, the corner again in Psalm 118, open to me the gates of righteousness, that I may enter through them and give thanks to the Lord. This is the gate of the Lord. The righteous shall enter through it. Who is the door? That's Jesus. Jesus said, I am the door, right? I thank you that you have answered me and become my salvation. What does Yeshua mean? Yeshua means Yahweh saves, right? My salvation. The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. And this is Eben again. This is our stone word. And then Pinna. This is the Lord's doing. It is marvelous in our eyes. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. So,
uh, quite a comment here from Islam is my identity. Literal presence of God on earth, but God say in Old Testament, God say he do not walk on straight. First of all, I have no idea what reference you think you're talking about, but let's pretend for a second that God said, I don't walk on the street. How exactly is the Ark of the Covenant walking on the street exactly? I don't know. Neither does he. I suggest you stop repeating empty Dawa lines and start looking things up. Every time you try to make a comment, try to make one of these Dawa arguments, you have no clue what you're talking about. It's very obvious. You've never bothered to look it up, and you haven't even correctly memorized what you're supposed to say. So it
yep.
just makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, that's particularly funny. Um, uh, yeah, just incredibly goofy. All right.
Yeah, and
So,
Nemesis says, don't forget to wage jihad on the like button.
well, I suck
Yeah.
because I haven't even done that. Aren't I a silly Billy? All right. Sorry about that. Okay, a little bit more of Hebrew. We find a lot of things about mountains also. Har, which is a mountain hill or hill country, right? And we found a lot of things about that. For example, if you pray that these mountains will be thrown down, what is Christ talking about in that? This is a New Testament, Old Testament, right? Echoing each other. So, what he's talking about, a mountain stands for a kingdom aligned with its divinity or its divinities. So, whoever that kingdom counts as their divinity, that's who it's talking about. So God calls himself the God of Sinai and of Seir and of Paran and Jerusalem in various times because he's basically doing this rhetorically to claim the whole world as truly, genuinely his. Everything belongs to God. There is no place that belongs to anybody other than the true God. However, there are those who set up pretensions of being legitimate rulers. And they are also called these other kingdoms are referred to as mountains. These powers are called mountains, right? And we also find another word for a craggy place, a selah, and it's used two times of God, but generally is not. But here's Jeremiah 51. I will repay Babylon and all of the inhabitants of Chaldea before your very eyes for all the evil they have done in Zion, declares the Lord. Behold, I am against you. O destroying mountain, declares the Lord. Who's the destroying mountain?
Here's the sad news. We are running out of funds. All our work is going to stop unless people like you watching this video will help us. Your donations can get you a share in a reward and reap those rewards for years to come, inshallah. This is not a donation or a charity, but an investment for your hereafter.
So I accidentally clicked, I was trying to click on the comment above the super chat, and I accidentally clicked on the super chat, and as soon as I click on it, it's triggered. It
Yep.
was a donation from Christ is Salvation with no comment, so thank you very much for that. I was trying to click on this one. I have just begun my jihad against the like button. All right, go ahead and continue with the presentation. Sorry about that.
Um, uh, so anyway, where am I? So, oh, destroying mountains. So that means who's a destroying mountain? It's Babylon. It's a reference to the kingdom of Babylon, which is a destroying mountain, which destroys the whole earth. I will stretch out my hand against you and roll you down from the crags. That's Selah, right? And make you a burnt mountain. No stone shall be taken from you for a cornerstone, and no stone for a foundation, but you shall be a perpetual waste, declares the Lord. So, this means also that that the that the cornerstone cannot come from anywhere except for Israel proper, because there actually were a ton of Jews and Israelites who lived outside of Judea after the initial uh, dispersion of the Jews, right? But none of them, because they are all illegitimate, they're all destroying mountains, they're all illegitimate, right? And from none of them can come the cornerstone and no stone for foundation. There's no foundation from outside of Israel proper, Judea, right? So from those that small area is the only place where this cornerstone can come from. There's also references to high places, as everyone's pretty familiar with. They are places, again, that's why it's tied to mountains, where a lot of times people are illegitimately worshiping. They think that they're worshiping God, but a lot of times they'll go, oh, we can worship Yahweh, and we can also like shove in a little bit of Baal and a little bit of Asherah and a little bit of of this dude and a little bit of that dude, and cover all of our bases by putting them all together, that kind of thing. And God's saying that no, that's why the tabernacle was built, and that's why the singular temple was built, was to keep people from running off on their own and doing their own thing and participating in paganism, because that's what they did all the time whenever they were, as soon as they had the chance, they'd run off and be pagans because of the
So quick,
surroundings. Go ahead.
yeah, quick comment here from Una. She said that I need to add the clip of Ali Dawa saying that he would let his 9-year-old get married. And she says, don't forget, and we're proud of that.
And we're proud of that.
Got that
And
one covered. No problem.
all right, so this kind of leads right into pagan religious practices at that time. So they are these sanctuaries, sometimes carved in the rock on high places, consisted of a haram, like Masjid al-Haram, a sacred open-air enclosure accessible only to the unarmed and ritually clean people in ritual clothes. By unarmed, they mean like no arms of war. You could still have your sword that was considered an arm of self-defense, by the way, back then. There also the Beidel, or raised stone, or a statue of a god, was worshipped. So that Beidel, that is the same word as for the standing stones. It's just another word for it. So these standing stones, or a statue of the god, or a carved statue, either one was worshipped. The Nabateans originally represented their gods as Beidels on a podium, and later they gave them a human appearance. What's interesting about the early Islamic sources, the one that says that the woman of the Husa'a tribe, whatever, the scattered people, right? I need to listen to someone say that like 50 times to get it right. But I didn't have time. But anyway, about that particular lady is that it talked about how the stone was buried with its pillar underneath it, like to raise it up, a raised stone. And so these were both buried by the tribe, the Iyad tribe that was being kicked out. Very, very interesting, guys. Other Nabatean high places that are carved from rock, the best known overlooks the site of Petra on a summit measuring roughly 65 by 20 meters. There you go, all of you metric folks, are carved a large triclinium for ritual meals. Remember that I told you before that you couldn't necessarily tell whether or not some of those altars were for meals or for sacrifice, all right? A podium of beetles, a sacrificial altar, and a basin. The stone-built temples of the Nabateans and South Arabians were more elaborate structures, consisting of a rectangular walled enclosure, near one end of which was a stone canopy or a closed cella, or both, which contained the altar for sacrifices or the idol of the god. So there was some kind of extra enclosure in there near one end of this walled thing, and they're stone-built temples. So what the Kaaba kind of is a bit of a hybrid structure. The old haram enclosure combined with aspects of the temple, right? Other rooms and a cistern might be added, a cistern for ritual purification. The Zamzam well is a well for ritual purification, right? The Kaaba in Mecca, which became the sacred shrine of the Muslims, has a similar structure. It is a closed cella, which is full of idols in pre-Islamic times, in a walled enclosure with a well. A baitul, the black stone, is inserted in the wall of the Kaaba. It is veiled by the cloth cover, the kiswa. Now, I do want to point out that, of course, there are more beitels still in the Kaaba. The Yemeni corner is also a beitel. It's just that people forget about it, right?
A
So,
quick comment here from Soyub. We are expecting Lily Dawa to come out and say the black stone miracle has been debunked. It has been debunked. And you know what? We don't even need it because Islam is growing from its intolerance.
People are coming to Islam because of its intolerance.
And that was the worst Alidawa ever, just so you know. Because I totally screwed it up.
nice.
But continue on. Continue on.
Standing stones are masaboth or masaba singular, right? In biblical literature, are stones vertically set into the ground individually or in groups and range from a few centimeters, several meters high. In the ancient Near East, they are primarily known from the Levant, but are found in Arabia and the Sahara deserts as well. Some of the Saharan ones are not from the Bronze Age period. They kind of cropped up briefly on their own. To our present knowledge, they first appeared in the Natufian culture during the 11th millennium BC and persisted until the early Islamic period. So, actually, this one I did not find these myself. So, if they were in the Natufian culture, then it actually is a descendant from the Saharan, are a descendant from the Levantine ones. I had not found Natufian standing stones when I'd looked. And I did briefly look for them, but apparently these folks know of them, and they're almost certainly correct, right? Persisted until the early Islamic period. Wait, no, it didn't. It persisted until today because they still have them in the Kaaba. They still have two of them that they're worshiping. But anyway, of the 140 Masaboth sites documented or excavated to date in the southern Negev and eastern Sinai, the majority were dated to the 6th to 3rd millennium BC based on artifacts and radiometric analyses. Most commonly, Masaboth are made of natural, unhewn stones, although sometimes they have various degrees of shaping. Unlike stelae, they're usually neither decorated nor inscribed. So I noticed, remember I talked about the steles or stelae, if you're being correct, right? If you're being persnickety. That a stelae is differentiated in that it is decorated or inscribed. It has to have an inscription, and so it has almost always, if it has an inscription of words, it almost always has a non-worship focused purpose in. So it's not one of the things to which people bow down, right?
So two quick comments
Yep.
here. First from Stephen. He's talking to someone else, but he said the answer to that is a quote from Ali Dawa.
Not science. To hell with science.
I don't know what the context of that comment was, but I couldn't resist. Now, Islam is my identity has said this 3 times. So he thinks that he's got you and that he's debunked you. He's destroyed your career or whatever he's thinking because he keeps saying this over and over again. It is not hara, it is Masjid al-Haram, meaning holy.
Okay, so let me explain very quickly the concept of holiness in the ancient Near East. So haram means taboo, but it can also mean taboo in a holy way. So it's haram to do anything haram in the haram area, right? So it's the area of taboo. It's the area that is set apart, the area that is separated. Now, whenever you talk normally about things being halal or haram, what you're talking about, are they allowed or are they in this taboo category where you're not allowed to interact with them at all? So haram does not inherently necessarily mean evil. It means separated and set apart, either for something holy or because it is something filthy. So it's this peculiar word, and there is an equivalent in the same root, which is harem. It's with ease in I think they're both these. At least the second one is, but I think that they're both these in Hebrew. It has the same meaning, so it's just not used very much. It's a very old Semitic phrase. So the Masjid al-Haram has a haram area like every other shrine did, right? No different from all the rest of these Arab shrines that were to pagan gods. Okay. So anyway, in the Nabatean culture, large obelisks are known in Petra, um, and several sites contain niches carved in the sandstone rocks with pillar-like bas reliefs, similar to the biblical term. Give me 1 second. My dog thinks he's dying because
Yep,
I've been way
yep.
too long.
No worries. I got some super chats anyway. Another one from Christ is salvation.
I can't answer this question in a 20-minute interview, nor is it wise to do so, which is why I never brought this topic up myself. You will not find one lecture of mine about this issue. It should never be brought up in public. And I don't like these idiots, and they are idiots, wallahi. This is not something you discuss amongst the masses, ya akhi. It's not wise. I encourage anybody who is really interested to go deep to take the class. I do this class. It'll be 1 year later.
So I love how that one almost always comes up with blank comments because it fits. Yasser Khan, it's not wise to talk about this in public. It's not wise to talk about anything in Islam in public. Thank you for that donation. And then one more also from Christ is Salvation.
And Allah will bless you in a million ways. You find the tree will grow and you will have lots and lots of wealth. This is the example that we gave to the children. And I'm letting you know that when you sow that seed by giving, you shall receive much more than you gave by the will of Allah. Give as much as you can, for indeed you will reap much more than you have sown.
He says no comment needed since I said the first time there was no comment with the super chat. Thank you for all of your support. One other funny comment here from Sarita. Zakir Naik sticking his head to kiss the black stone in Mecca. The thumbnail is priceless. Thank you very much for that. Mary can take part of the credit. I had a different thumbnail at first, and she's like, that was a little boring. Why don't you do something different? So we ended up with Zakir Naik kissing the black stone.
Yep, that one. This one's really clear and it tickles me to no end. All right, so
And Professor Yaffa wanted to make sure you have a black dog.
indeed, it is mostly black. The black ones are like $5,000, so the pure black one. So it isn't quite pure black, but it is mostly black. He's also 90 pounds now, and he's going to get even bigger. So Anyway, so the similar to the biblical term, the ones in Nabatean culture are called Nasibi, and this is the equivalent. The M changes to an N in the Nabatean uh, uh, dialect a lot of times. So you have to know what changes happened in a particular area to know whether or not things are equivalent. It's the same word as the Hebrew. They're also called masgida. Uh-huh. So they're called masjid, guys. Right? It's called a masjid, is what they are called. The G and J are the same in that particular area. G and J are the same in Petra, and also to the south, there's this area called Dayton, this city called Dayton, and there was a kingdom around it. Both of them have G for J. Okay, so the place where they are called, given the same name. And I want you to notice now that you see Nesibe, right? And you know that they are equivalent to Masaba, right? Look at the trilateral root, what that becomes. N, S, B. This is a trilateral root for idol in Arabic, right? Ansab is what they're often called. And sometimes, so ansab is the word for idol. It means a beetle, an uncut stone. That's what it means, guys. It was not a term only for carved stones. It was originally mainly a term for the beetles, the uncut stones, and they were placed in a masjid, right? So ansab, idol, is this uncut stone. The black stone is an ansab. It is an idol of this kind, guys. And masjid, this is the same word in a different dialect. Okay, so lesser known, and notice that double S. It's a phenomenon that happens more often in those dialects up there than in Arabic. But anyway, lesser known are the many small standing stones found in the vast Nabatean domain. The present paper, I intend to describe these stones and discuss their meaning. For convenience only, distinction terminology will be made between the earlier ones and the Nabatean ones. And masjid, by the way, means a place or thing of worship or prostration. Remember what I talked about a sujood before? That's SJD. That means bowing down. Masjid is a place of bowing down in worship. Okay, so that these trilateral, so all Semitic words, or almost all of them, they all have roots, unless they were recently borrowed. And most of them have three-letter roots, and all the words with these three-letter roots have some kind of connection in meaning, unless weird borrowing happened. But they almost always have connections in meaning. So whenever I'm talking about the NSB being a trilateral root for an idol that's a stone that's not carved, that's what I mean, is that you add extra letters to, or you add vowels to like change the meaning, and adding that M means that it's not it's a passive voice, which is kind of beyond what you need, but you rearrange the letters in certain ways to have words that mean different things. So Rose Petal needs to explain why dogs are the devil.
Yeah, well, she said
Yeah.
dogs are haram. Dogs are the devil. That sure is a lot of devils.
Well,
Just saying.
if you hang on, Rose Petal, I will tell you why they are, because I actually know. It's not because you're allergic. So.
And Professor Yaffle says, "Who knew Mary could talk for 2 hours about a stone?"
I can't. You have no idea. So, so there are two big groups of stones. One represents deities, perceiving the stones contain the power and spirit of the gods, and the second represents the ancestors. So they're able to hold the souls of ancestors, because souls are spirits after you die, right? Since great affinities will be found between ancient Masaboth and Nabatean standing stones, the comparison seems justified, etc. Unworked small stone slabs have also been found in Nabatean sanctuaries. sanctuaries. That means haram spaces, right? One stood in situ in the Nabatean temple at Kasbaret in northern Sinai. Another is found lying in a small sanctuary on top of Mount Serbal. Both sites support the sanctity of crude standing stones. And by the way, there were standing stones that marked the entrance of Mecca, okay, Mecca proper. So several written sources describe standing stones in the classical world as representing deities. Some sources refer to Arabs prior to the rise of Islam. And here are some examples of people talking in these eras before Islam about these pagan stones. Antonius of Piacenza, goodness, that's probably Kinsa, sorry, 6th century AD, addressing the cult of southern Sinai population, said, "On this mountain there is a place where the Saracens," who are these? Saracen means Arabs, by the way, "where they set up their idol, which is a snow white stone." He continues describing how the stone miraculously changes its color. The Sudius lexicon, 10th century AD, relating to the Nabatean cult in Petra, said that Dushara, this is the god Ares of Petra in Arabia. This god is most venerated by the people. His statue is a square block of stone, 4 feet tall, 2 feet broad. It stands on a golden base, and they sacrifice before the stone and pour on it blood libation. So Hubal he was represented at first by a beetle. Like most of the Arab deities, it was later personified with human features by a statue made of cornelian with the right arm truncated. And here are some comparisons to idols that are mentioned in Judges, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's Qurayshis are said to have replaced with a golden arm.
And if I'm not mistaken, Muhammad himself was dedicated to the god Hubal.
So, maybe not dedicated. There are sources that say that if you had uncertain paternity, Hubal was a divining deity. So you would cast arrows and divine whether or not something is true or not. So you would take a suspected illegitimate child in front of Hubal and then throw the arrows, and then the soothsayer would say either yes, this is an illegitimate child, or no, this is a legitimate child. So it is quite likely that, based upon how very firmly Islam holds the idea that Muhammad was born 4 years after his father's death, this really kind of cements the idea that there were doubts about his paternity, and that's why he may have been brought before them. It is true that children are supposed to be there's a sacrifice that's supposed to be made when children are born to Allah. Even now, you're supposed to sacrifice something whenever they're born, but it was the fact that he was brought before Hubal, and Hubal himself, and then his grandfather supposedly prays to Allah, is probably actually a reference to the dubiousness of his paternity. But they kind of try to work around that. But here are some more examples here. I saw Umar ibn al-Khattab kissing the black stone and saying, "I'm kissing you while I know that you are just a stone, and if I had not seen the messenger of Allah kissing you, I would not kiss you." So he's obviously quite uncomfortable with the fact that they're kissing what appears to be, in all respects, a pagan stone, tons of other people. So again, I said NSB, also SNB, there are some broken forms. They're called broken whenever certain letters get switched. These are Beetles, or they are not altars. So a lot of times they'll talk about, oh, they sacrificed it before an altar or on an altar or something like that. They'll do that in translation. It actually means before a Beetle, before one of these standing stones. So it's referring to sacrificing something in front of a standing stone, just like Muhammad continued to do for the black stone throughout the entire time. They would also sacrifice between Safa and Marwa. Oh goodness. Anyway, those two. cannot speak today. Sorry, guys, I'm so tired. So they would also sacrifice animals there. Why would they sacrifice them there? To the two ancient pagan gods who were originally worshipped there, and it just kind of continued, right?
Mhm.
Now, um,
So before you move on, would you say that, at least in this particular instance, Umar was more in line with God's will, more understanding of what monotheism is about than Muhammad?
yeah, he was. Umar is very he very much definitely believed that Muhammad was a true prophet, but at the same time, he made a number of changes to make Islam more in line with various aspects of uh, Jewish belief and true monotheistic belief than what it had been, and was clearly quite comfortable with this, right? And then again, this is the whoever is facing this pagan stone is facing the hand of the most merciful. Very interesting stuff.
And
And this
one
is
other quick comment here from Una, 250 likes on this stream, and I'll cook bacon outside the Kaaba. So there you go. Let's get 250 likes.
yep. And then here's another very interesting one that I find extremely significant. We used to worship stones, and when we found a better stone than the first one, we would throw the first one and take the latter. But if we could not get a stone, then we would collect some earth, some soil, and bring a sheep and milk that sheep over it and perform the tawaf around it. So you would perform circling around whatever stones you could find. When the month of Rajab came, we used to stop the military actions, calling this month the Iron Remover. Because we used to remove and throw away the iron parts of every spear and arrow in the month of Rajab. They didn't like throw it away. They just did not use it. A lot of these things get distorted over time, right? He added, when the prophet was sent with Allah's message, I was a boy working as a shepherd of the family camels. When we heard him, we ran to the fire, meaning that they actually went and followed Musalima, which they thought was a more credible prophet than Muhammad was originally. And only after he was killed did they decide, oh yeah, let's go into let's go and join Muhammad now that Muhammad's successors now that this guy's dead. But what's particularly interesting here is the idea that if you would come to a place while you were traveling, so there are other ahadith that talk about people who were traveling who would bring things. Let's see if there's it's in the next one. Yes, here it is. So this is Ibn al-Kalbi, who's from 9th century, so like 300 years after, right? He often referred to standing stones, ansab, and described the cult surrounding them. Remember, ansab, standing stones, not an altar, and described the cult surrounding them. This includes sacrifices, blood libation, and circumambulation. He wrote, whenever a traveler stopped at a place or a station in order to rest or spend the night, he would select for himself 4 stones, pick out the finest among them and adopt it as his god, and use the remaining 3 as supports for his cooking pot. So the most ancient form of cook fire was the 3 stones fire, because with 3 stones you could put a pot over and it doesn't tip over like a 3-legged stool. They don't have to be exactly even, right? So this was an extra rock, and that would be the one that you would circle around and bow to and pray to that night. Why would you do this? Because every place would have deity, every place would have a god, and you would need to have this god that you could localize so that you would properly give worship to the god of that place, whoever this god happened to be. And so the nicest stone is like the way of kind of localizing and controlling and calling to the god of that place. And you could be sure to be secure in that place if the god of that place wants to protect you, right? And so that was the idea that's behind this. And so that's the idea behind both of these. It's not that people were constantly looking for a rock and throwing one away, right? It's that anytime they stopped, they needed to have a way to pray to their god, the god of that place, for protection, because every single place had its own spirits, right? So anyway, a similar description was later repeated by Ibn Sa'ad and other writers when describing the cult of the goddess Alat at Taif. Ibn al-Qadi wrote, Alat is a newer goddess than Mana, or Manat, right? It's not really a spoken difference. It's a written difference. Anyway, she was a cubic rock about the god Sa'ad and the Judean coastal plain. I don't know why he said Judean. It's not the Judean coastal plain. The Sa'ad is in the coastal area of the Hijaz. I'm going blank on the word right now because brain farts. But anyway, it was a long rock covered with blood. Um, so there weren't just a few stones. There are many stones, as I mentioned before. So we have the people walk between the two corners. The Yemeni stone, that's the stone of felicity, and also the black stone. Um, Umar, who oddly, who didn't like the power of the Blackstone and got uncomfortable with it, at one point he was an enthusiast of the Makam, which is the footprint stone that Muhammad declared was Abraham's footprint, right? And take you the Makam as a place of salah, so that's a place to pray, and bow down is right there. So the Kaabas and Masajid are inherently pagan, right? So we have examples here. The last hour would not come until the woman of the tribe of Daus could be seen going around uh, the owner of Khalasa for worship, and owner of Al Khalasa is a place, and Tabala, where there was a temple in which the people of the tribe of the Daus used to worship the idol. Now, this actually says in the Arabic, it says there was a Kaaba. It's called a Kaaba. We also have Alat, who is Allah's consort or daughter, and actually I'm convinced by now that we are quite certain that Alat was considered a daughter only at this time, and I'll explain why later. But I hadn't gotten to that research yet when I wrote this. At Taif, Al-Uzza, at Nakhla, and that's where, who is it? Khalid, or I think that's who it was, killed a black woman. And he said, yep, that's the demon Al-Uzza, that poor black woman who you just beheaded. That was totally her. There's also one called Re'am, which was in Yemen, destroyed in pre-Islamic times. Same place, owner of Al-Khalasa. That is the Du there is Arabic for owner or possessor of Al-Khalasa, which was often used of deities, right? Said to be a carved white quartz, and Talaha Dul al-Kafain, he of the two hand palms, so like of the two palms of your hands, of the Daos. Du al-Shara, that's Dushara, which is probably a name for Has, the Edomite high god, but was separated from that particular god. So like he bifurcated into two beings after a while, and one of them became Dushara, right? And that's the one we we're talking about in Nabatea. That was their high god, was Dushara, and that's the one that was at the high place, right? So there are also masajid of aniconic stones, meaning ones that weren't carved at all for certain, and those are Manat and Sa'ad, were definitely aniconic, meaning that they weren't carved into after being found. There are also some pagan Badals that are hilarious.
So 1 second here, a couple quick comments. Patriot 316, did I just witness Mary's brain freeze? Never seen a supercomputer do that before.
Oh, they actually crash all the time, especially the early ones. Maybe I'm an early one.
Bowrudder said they liked their paganism a lot. A lot. Get it? A lot?
Nice.
And here's the best one of the recent jokes. Baba Blackstone, have you any sins? Yes, sir. 1 box full.
Very nice.
From Christ is Salvation. I also wanted to read this comment from a Muslim who recently entered the chat. Ayad says, dogs are mentioned in the Quran as we're never called evil. Learn about your beliefs first before attacking others. Have they learned the Bible? I don't think so. Well, what we're referring to are the Sahih sayings of Muhammad about dogs being devils and whatnot. So are you saying that Muhammad was lying, that Muhammad was wrong, that the hadith are fabricated? What are you saying exactly? And also, where in the Quran does it say that dogs are good?
So I actually put up in the chat the link to Sunan ibn Majah, what is it, 3210. I asked the Messenger of Allah about the all black dog, and he said it is a devil. So it is a
Hmm.
shaitan. So I guess Muhammad is
And
silly.
yep. So Muhammad is a liar because we don't know anything, and we are just trying to attack Islam by repeating Muhammad's words. So therefore, that means Muhammad is a liar, and everyone should convert to Islam or something like that. I'm not sure exactly how it works because I don't follow Muslim logic, but hey, there you go. It's the only religion I have ever heard of where people are constantly saying that their own sources are crap in order to try to get you to believe in the religion.
All right. So there are pagan bagels, other pagan bagels. There was in Gaiman. I do not know how to pronounce that. Sorry. It had a red stone, and the Kaaba of Al Abalat also had a white stone. So that was talking again about the same white stone. And again, that's called a Kaaba. But another one had a red stone, and this is in Gustav Edmund von Grünebaum's Classic Islam: A History, AD 600 to 1258 AD, page 24. The stone of the god Dimar, and we do not know what god this is. Nobody can figure it out. It's in Ibn Ishaq, but nobody has been able to find a Dimar or anything like that in the inscriptions. But anyway, Banu Sulaim is also supposed to be an aniconic Betel. Um, there's in the Book of Idols, this is also by Al-Kalbi. He has lots of the early material like this. We have Manat, that's the same of Mana before, right? That's a large aniconic black stone, and that's where he mentions that. He also mentions Sa'ad, also an aniconic long rock in Jeddah. So yeah, it was near Jeddah, right? It was really close to Jeddah. I don't know why the other one said Judea. I think they just like had a brain fart and just typed the wrong thing. Um, but it's Jeddah, it's not Judea. Anyway, there's also the aniconic black stone of the Temple of Aphrodite. Now, that actually is a meteorite. Here's a picture of it, right? It was venerated near Paphos, Cyprus. And it is believed to be, and it looks very much like an iron meteorite. It has the correct appearance, and it's agreed by geologists that it is a meteorite, and this may, even though it's in Cyprus, it may have been influenced by this kind of Islamic culture, right? Or this pre-Islamic Arab culture. Now, here's
So,
the funniest one.
one second here. Control Yourself says this stream rocks harder than the Kaaba.
Oh my
So
gosh.
that is great. And we do have a new Muslim in the chat. Nega says Christians practicing Pagan Christmas of Scandinavia tree every year. It has nothing to do with Christianity December month.
Yes,
Thank
it
you
does.
for that amazing intellectual rebuttal of the stone worship of pagan Arabia, aka Islam. When you have something on topic to say, let me know. Until then, the next time you make an off topic comment, you will go to timeout.
Yes, and I will, next Christmas, I will talk about why Christmas trees are authentically a symbol of Christianity. um, and where they came from, which some very foolish people haven't bothered. Anyway, this is my favorite story. Everybody who's here, you get to hear the best. Okay, so there was this dude named Emperor Egalal. Oh my goodness, I looked him up ahead of time, but that was a few weeks ago. Ella, what is that? Elagabus. Pronunciation. So
Oh, good news, good news. Lorenzo has entered the
Elagabalus.
chat.
Here we go. Elagabalus. Now I do not have to offend everybody's ears with the wrong words. All right. Emperor Elagabalus. Very easy. Say that 20 times fast. who was a Roman emperor. So Emesa, Syria, had a black stone of Eloh Gabal, Lord of the Mountain, a title of Baal Hadad. So uh, Baal and Hadad were separate deities, but they became one deity. So now he's one deity. It's a Baal stone, right? So Eloh Gabal is Baal, right? Emperor Elagabalus, whose real name is Varius Avestus Basinius, or else Marcus Aurelius Antoninus. The second is what he adopted after he became emperor, but everybody called him Elagabalus after Elogabal, his god who has a black stone, right? He was an Arab from Emesa, uh, and he tried to replace the Roman gods with his god, of whom he had been the high priest. Through the veneration of his black stone, he married Elogabal to Minerva and took a Vestal virgin as his own wife. And like this symbolic marriage of these two religions, and now they're all one. And he's married the Vestal virgin, who's a virgin of Hestia anyway. So I don't know what that has to do with Minerva, but just nod and smile. He's an emperor and he was nuts, right? He was a cross dresser and rumored to work as a male prostitute outside of the palace. This heavily connects to previous Arab practice, by the way. Sources claim he also took a husband and role played as a cheating wife. He was circumcised and depilated according to the fitra that Muhammad describes as good behavior, right? And the people in Rome were very disapproving of that. They thought this depilation was extremely effeminate and were horrified by it, right?
So before you go on, Lorenzo has entered the chat. I'm sure we're all very excited
Oh,
about that.
goodness. I can't wait.
Again, again, endless nonsense screamed by the dead as Christian atonement has been dispatched by me with no resistance. I reserve my comments for later, as I will not be allowed to express myself.
No, he
I don't
won't, because
recall you.
we've already
Well, first of
covered atonement. Remember? I went back.
all,
So
yeah.
touching the stone. Go ahead. Yeah.
But we are talking about atonement today. We're
Mhm.
talking about the Islamic conception of atonement, where your sins are taken away by kissing, touching a black stone. So we will be happy to talk about atonement in Islam when you call in later. We will definitely be happy to do that. Now, as far as you not being allowed to express yourself, you have been allowed to express yourself every single time. You are expressing yourself right now in the comments. But again, this is leaving yourselves with your backs to the sea with no retreat. As you spit this bull, it's obvious you have no idea of the biblical record. Yep, you're urinating into a hurricane. Well, you have no idea what we've even said. You haven't been here. So how do you know that we have no idea about whatever you think we have no idea about? You have no idea what we even said. You just want to show up here and spew nonsense and then come up and demonstrate that you have a demon living inside you. And don't worry, we'll be very happy to welcome your demon back to the chat so that you can show everyone what Islam is all about, how it becoming a Muslim means allowing yourself to be possessed by demons and hating everyone and everything. So we'll welcome you back. Don't worry.
Yep.
All right.
And he needs to talk about the atonement of touching the stone, because he says that Islam doesn't have atonement. So interesting that they would translate it that way. So Emperor, wait, let me find my actual slide. There we go. Emperor Elagabalus, he placed the sun god in a chariot adorned with gold and jewels and brought him out from the city to the suburbs. So his god was a sun god, and that means like the stone. He put the stone in a chariot. And this is the reverse side of his coin, by the way. I forgot to say. So his coin shows the rock, which is the image of his god, the uncarved rock, which was on the reverse side of his coinage. Just like they would typically have the emperor on one side and God on the other. That rock is his god, guys. It's insane. So They brought him out from the city to the suburbs. A 6-horse chariot carried the divinity. The horse is huge and flawlessly white, with expensive gold fittings and rich ornaments. No one held the reins, and no one rode with the chariot. The vehicle was escorted as if the god himself were the charioteer. Elagabalus ran backward in front of the chariot, facing the god and holding the horse's reins. He made the whole journey in this reverse fashion, looking up into the face of his god, the black stone which he is venerating. And then Dio said, I will not describe the barbaric chants with which Elagabalus, together with his mother and grandmother, chanted to Elagabal, or the secret sacrifices that he offered to him. So notice, chants. So these magical kinds of chants that you find in Islam that you're supposed to say as you're circling the stone and addressing the stone and everything else, these are the same sorts of things that Elagabalus was doing with reference to the worship of his own stone, along with sacrifices. They accuse him of all kinds of dirty secret sacrifices, but he did plenty of unsecret sacrifices too. So let's look at one particular version of a story that's repeated many times about Muhammad's sacrifice to idols. I want everybody to pay attention because there's going to be a particularly hilarious detail in here, okay? I was told that the apostle of God, while speaking with Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nafail, said, he was the first to blame me for worshiping idols and forbade me to do so. Okay, so this Zayd ibn Amr is considered to be one of the first, the Hanifs, right? The early monotheists, right? He was the first to blame me for worshiping idols. What was Muhammad doing? He was worshiping idols and forbade me to do so. I had come from Taif with Zayd ibn Haritha. Now, I want everyone to tell me in the chat, Zayd ibn Haritha, when did Muhammad come to own Zayd? Remember, Zayd was his slave whom he freed. So when did he come to own Zayd? I want people who know, if you can think about it, when did he come to own Zayd and be familiar with Zayd and hang out with Zayd, right?
So we'll give them a chance to think about that. I'm not sure if we'll get a response or not, but we'll give them a chance here. Ahad said, she did her research open-minded. So I think he's saying that you're doing a good job.
No, I think he's talking about
open-minded.
Some silly woman who pretended to convert to Islam to.
He's not. Okay, so he's not paying any attention to us. He's just having some
He's just talking
side conversation. I see.
Yep.
Here, I was trying to give him credit for complimenting you, but he also said Andrew Tate is innocent. I don't know what he's supposedly innocent of. Every crime he's accused of is something he bragged about doing. So the only possibilities are he's guilty, or he's been for years bragging about lies. I mean, it's one or the other, right? Either he really scammed people and bragged about it, or he lied about scamming people, thus scammed people. And either way, you're like, no problem, he's a Muslim, or at least claims to be a Muslim, so he must be innocent. Very, very interesting.
All right. So, nice. So, well, it says Khadija asked Momo to adopt Zayd, and I don't know that she didn't ask him to, but somebody connected it to Khadija, which is correct. So, Khadija gave Zayd to Muhammad. Muhammad married Khadija supposedly when he was 25. So the youngest that Muhammad could possibly be during this incident is 25. Keep this in mind as we read forward, because there's a hilarious bit in here that was added in because this is so embarrassing. So I had come from Taif with Zayd when I passed by Zayd ibn Amr, Zayd ibn Haritha, when I passed by Zayd ibn Amr on the high ground above Mecca. That high ground above Mecca is supposed to be the top of the hill or the mountain in which the cave of Hira is in. That's where Zayd ibn Amr is supposed to be living, right? For the Quraysh had made a public example of him for abandoning their religion, so that he went forth from among them and stayed in the high ground of Mecca. He's staying in the high places. Interesting. I went and sat with him. I had with me a bag of meat from our sacrifices to our idols. And that is the word ansab in the plural. Okay? So, he has made sacrifices to our idols, which Zayd ibn Haritha is carrying, and I offered it to him. Then it says, I was a young lad at the time. Again, the earliest that this could be, he was 25, but this is so embarrassing that they insert in here someone fabricated, I was a young lad at the time. Not possible. I said, each of this food, oh my uncle, because remember, he's supposed to be like this young lad, right? He replied, nephew, it is a part of the sacrifices of yours which you offer to your idols, isn't it? When I answered that it was, he said, if you were to ask the daughters of Abdul Muttalib, they would tell you that I never eat of these sacrifices and I want nothing to do with them. Then he blamed me and those who worship idols and sacrifice to them, saying, they are futile, they can do neither good nor harm, or words to that effect. The apostles added, after that, with knowledge, I never stroked an idol of theirs, nor did I sacrifice to them until Allah honored me with his apostleship. So aside from the very obvious fabrications, here is Muhammad saying that he went to Taif and sacrificed to the idol of, what is it? Is Manat there? Forgot. Anyway, one of the three female idols. I'm just going blank right now again. Again, a very long week. So one of the three daughters of Allah, he had taken an animal to and sacrificed before it, and now was taking back the meat, and it's being refused. So Muhammad also engaged in this behavior, and he continued to do it forever. He just did it to the black stone, the idol of Allah. Now, there's something also interesting.
So, quick pause here. So Yetta recently joined the chat. He's very lost, very confused. So could you just give like a 2-minute summary of what we've been talking about? He's like, what? Stone worship? Who's worshiping stones? What is this stream about? I can't figure it out.
So Muhammad previously worshipped many stones, worshipped many gods through many stones. The same as all the Arabs who were pagans. This was a common pagan practice. Stones, both completely unshaped, partly shaped, and fully carved, were assigned to different deities, and people sacrificed before them, and Muhammad did likewise. After Muhammad decided he was a prophet, he stopped sacrificing to everybody except for the pagan god Allah. That's the difference, okay? So that's the only thing. And then to this day, Muslims still, at the end of Ramadan, they sacrifice to the pagan god. So this is something that is inherent in Islam. It's just paganism that has been given a thin whitewashing of monotheism. It's okay as long as you're only doing these completely pagan things to one particular pagan idol, but all the rest of the idols we have to destroy. So there's also a hadith that says the entire earth is made a place of prayer. That says prayer. I think it's prostration, sujood again, right? Except for graveyards and latrines. Okay, so he would very occasionally use a very small, and by earth, what was meant was actually not just the earth as we know it, but actually the ground. And so here he's saying that all of the ground actually really belongs to Allah. So whenever you bow, because before you would have to worship on, you'd worship your local God. Now you can worship Allah, who has all of the dirt and all of the stone and all of everything, right? And so Muhammad, very interestingly, avoided using a prayer mat, carpet, anything, unless it was super dirty. And then he'd have a mat just large enough for his forehead and hands, especially his hands if it was really, really muddy. Otherwise, no mats, only in dirt. So the Shia adopted prayer carpets for comfort, but they use a turba of pressed earth, which comes from Karbala, which is their particular holy city, to be their prayer place. So they make sure to still pray touching earth. Your forehead must touch this piece of earth, okay? Because again, that's part of you need the holy ground, and all the ground is holy enough for you to bow on now. But you need that ground, and they still maintain that belief. So we're right at the end. What's the point of stone worship? Deities were localized, so you can concentrate or address the deity by addressing the best rock of the area. Deities could be worshipped through stones, so appropriate stones could be used to cause their presence and attention. The more impressive the stone, the more power it has to hold that particular deity and to invoke them. Um, so bringing it back to the Kaaba, as is well known, the notion of haram in the pre-Islamic tradition implies a tract of land delimited by visible landmarks, ansab, and secluded from any profane use. Such ground may have belonged to a divinity who usually had a temple of some kind in the midst of it, but could as well have been attached to a tomb. Many passages of old Arab poetry as quoted for, etc., illustrate this particular form of respect for the deceased, but do not necessarily prove the existence of a real ancestor cult. It is common knowledge among the students of ancient Semitic religions, at least since a particularly famous book, which is in German that I don't speak, that pagan cults of the Arabian Peninsula were often provided with large precincts called hema or haram, and guaranteed and regarded as the sacred land on which cultivation of soil, hunting game, cutting trees, etc., were strictly forbidden. These same things are forbidden in Mecca. You're not allowed to cut anything unless you're just cutting it for to make a. You can't use camel dung that's dried to forge steel or whatever. So you're allowed to cut stuff if you're a blacksmith, but everybody else, you're not allowed to cut anything. You're also not allowed to hunt game within the precincts of Mecca, which was like a large territory. It wasn't a city, it was a territory, right? Some of these reserves came to be respected by Muhammad himself when their cult was abolished, and with their traditional exemptions were confirmed, as happened with the Hema of Alat and Taif. In the most outstanding of a haram remains, of course, the holy enclosure of Mecca. So the most outstanding example that survives of any of these pagan sacred enclosures is Mecca. So, and there's also these other ones talk about the HJR, that's the trilateral root, which means an enclosed space. And that's the name of that Hijr Ismail, which is the Ishmael Hijr enclosure, where it's probably where after they lifted up the Kaaba so it wouldn't flood anymore, that part was not roofed in like the others. It was probably originally part of the whole thing, but they need to still sacrifice the animals inside, technically, the temple, the Kaaba, except you can't do that because they can't really climb a really narrow ladder or a couple of wooden steps. The animals can't make it up. It's just a disaster. So they probably kept that outside, partly because they didn't know how to roof it because they weren't very technologically advanced and it's a special shape, but also because they needed a place to sacrifice things, right? So the difference between, in some places it's called a hijr, and some places a haram, and those are somewhat ambiguous in their terms depending on what region you're in. So in some places your holy enclosure would also seem to be called an HJR instead. But the veil or barrier before the holiest area was very important as well. That's the hijab. That's the what's called the kiswa over the Kaaba. And at the time of Muhammad, you had to lift up the skirts of the Kaaba to be able to kiss the stones, right? And you could not kiss the stone, or you had to lift it up and go under it to be able to access the holiest thing, that stone, which is important too. And this is from the Sacred Space in Ancient Arab Religions by M. Galinowski. Why do you guys have to have difficult names? And that is it. We are done.
All right, excellent. Since you were close to the end there, I stopped reading comments to let you get through it. We have a new individual in the chat, Yetter, who said, "Is this channel a religious channel?" And then David YouTube said, "Nah, it's a geologist channel." That's why we're talking about rocks today. But yes, obviously, this is a religious channel, but we're glad, and we're very glad that you are here today, Yetter. Or as Professor Yoffel says, this is a channel for exposing lies. Also very true. We'll open this up to callers here in just a second. I want to read a couple of these comments first. Rama says, Allah is the black sun. He is dirty and in pieces. Can't say I disagree with that. in any way. Genesis says, no counters, nothing, not one verse to counter all these truths. Quran is a poor man's lawyer to plea. And it is interesting, you know, we've been talking about the black stone in principle, something Muslims care deeply about, for a little over 2.5 hours, and we have not heard one remotely on topic response the entire time. We had some attempts at distraction. We had some empty rhetoric saying we're lying or whatnot, but they couldn't point out anything specific. Not one on topic response from anyone that I saw. So we have a question from Furinkazin. So would it be safe to say Islam started as a henotheism and evolved to monotheism?
I don't think that there was evolution. I think that it was polytheism with a high god. That's all it was. So it was polytheism with a high god early with Muhammad. And actually, I believe that originally Muhammad was he did not originally teach that that Allah is his God. It wasn't till after the 3 years when he was supposedly teaching in secret that he taught that. Before that, he taught that Al-Rab was his God, and Al-Rab was synonymous with Rahman, who was the God, the Father according to the Christians, and then it was just used as a term for God by the South Arabians. And that's significant because of the way the terminology evolved. It fed into Muhammad's misconception that Christians believed in multiple deities. And so, because if the Christians worship Al-Rahman, Al-Masih, and also the Holy Spirit, then they have, well, Muhammad didn't know about the Holy Spirit, but then they have three gods. If the Jews only worship Rahman, right? But it was a terminology confusion that I think really led into his utter perplexity at what the Christian belief system was, and the misconception that continues to this day. I did not meet a Muslim in all we did face-to-face evangelism in Ohio in multiple cities. I did not meet a Muslim the entire time who understood that we only believe in one God and not in three gods. They all thought we were tritheists because they were that incredibly ignorant. But after
Well,
that,
or they were actually going with what the Quran seems to believe.
well, they were going with what the Quran says, because Muhammad was that ignorant, and that leads to their ignorance. So I'm not saying that in like a pejorative sense, like, haha, they were so stupid, but they literally did not know that we believe in one God. And I think that that is connected to Muhammad's confusion, which is connected to the usage of Rahman in that particular area by those particular people, that led into this confusion that's continued ever since. So yeah, I don't mean in any sort of like pejorative sense, but they just did not know, because what does the Quran say? It says that they believe in Isa, and Mary, who was a consort of Allah, who then had a baby, Isa, who came into being at that moment, right? So I will happily allow our
Yep. So
next
we
guest.
got a couple people who have joined the chat. I'm pretty sure they're both Christians. So let me get through the comments first. So first of all, Lorenzo says, "Watch how I completely paralyzed all comments from Thad's supporters because I'm allowed to freely express myself. I literally shut down. I dare you go to then see for yourself." No idea what delusion you're talking about, Lorenzo. Everyone has continued talking at the same rate they did before you showed up. Literally, no one cares about your stupid comments. So I don't know what fantasy world you're living in, but the phones are open. You can call in. So let me answer a couple questions from the audience here. Marek said, how did Hatun like her trip to America? I think she enjoyed it here because she got to talk to Muslims. I don't think that she could care less about anything a normal terrorist cares about. All she cares about is whether she gets the opportunity to talk to Muslims or not, and she did. And she'll be in the United States for a while longer yet. So far, so good on that. Will you do a show on Dul Qarnayn's Great Wall in the age of satellite photography? Good suggestion. I'll definitely put that on the possibility list. Oh, I forgot to read this from earlier. Uh, I think you mean hedonism, or hedon is theism, right? Or whatever. Point getting it.
Theism.
Yeah, getting hedonism into it because that's what Islam is all about. We also have, oh no, Lorenzo is back from his imaginary gym and ready to take us on. So we will look forward to him calling in. Stephen Young says, sheep eats Quran verses, dogs scare away Allah's angels. It seems like all you would need to conquer Islam is a single farm animal.
Nice.
Or sorry, a single animal farm. Slightly different, but you just need a farm full of animals and you can take down Islam. And don't forget the rooster that holds up the earth. That is an underappreciated Islamic farm animal, I would definitely have to say.
Yep. Between the rooster and the whale, we're all set, I guess.
Yep. Whale's not a farm animal, though.
So. No, that is true.
Looks like Lorenz is trying to call in, but it looks like he's having connection issues again, sadly. I can't add him to the stream because he hasn't fully connected. It's weird. He never had problems, and then like the last 3 times he's had problems. And so I don't know whatever has changed on your end, Lorenzo, is problematic.
Yeah,
because maybe you changed providers or you moved or I don't know what, but you no longer get good signal and you now constantly have issues. So you says, you're a racist, calling us stone black. How dare you? My apologies. It was actually an African American stone.
It's a blackface stone because it's actually white, but it's covered in.
Oh, extra racist. Extra racist, man.
So only its face is black.
Yeah, it's a white stone pretending to be black. Can't get much more racist than that. So Una says, met a Muslim who told me all prophets touch their foreheads to the ground. So I did that and identified myself as a prophet and said, God told me to tell you to be a Christian. You didn't like it. I wonder why I didn't like that.
I would like to see the particular term touch forehead to ground anywhere in the Bible because it doesn't exist, right?
Yeah, for that matter, in the Quran.
Yeah, well, sujood is actually in there, and sujood is said to be that particular form of prostration. So, but there is nothing that insists that, like a lot of it in the Bible, people fall on their face. If you fall on your face, this is a spontaneous act of astonishment and being overwhelmed, right? There are times when people prostrate in the word for it in Hebrew, whatever that meant, whether or not that meant putting your forehead on the ground or not. Given all the forms of Christian worship, the exact movements are not the same, but or Jewish worship, either one. But fall on your face is different from I shall now stand and hold my hands like this, and then I shall kneel, and then I shall do this a certain number of times. One is a spontaneous act in which you are overwhelmed. The other one is a ritual act in which you are attempting to access the divine through a particular pathway that gives you blessings, just like manipulation. It's a spell that you cast on Allah to force him to give you good things multiple times.
So last thing, and then I'll take the calls. How do you respond when Muslims use the language barrier as an excuse for the verse, i.e. makes more sense in Arabic? Well, the first thing to ask them is whether they know Arabic. We encountered an individual like this when we were doing the street outreach. He's like, I have an Arabic in my Quran in my car. I can go get it. You have to read it in Arabic. I said, great. We have an Arabic speaker right here. Let's discuss it in Arabic.
And then he panics.
George comes over, who speaks Arabic. Guy didn't speak a word of Arabic. He had no clue what George, greeted him in Arabic. Guy had no clue what he was saying. So,
Well, also something else, something that you can do is you can learn how to navigate corpus.quran.com, and you can learn how to look at the words and their literal translations, and then click on the word to see if the word's being translated correctly. And you can find all the places where it's deceptive, messed up, even if they're faking it there, by clicking on the word and going to all the other times that it means something different, right? And so you can have them, okay, would you please read this to me? Okay, what does this word mean? What does that word mean? What does this word mean? What does that word mean? Are you sure that that's what that means? Are you confident? You click on it and you show what it actually means, and then that kind of thing. So that's something that you can do. Get familiar with it before you try it in person. Kind of run through it with other people if you can. That's very helpful.
yeah, and in addition to asking them if they know Arabic, they may pretend to, they may actually
Well, that's
ask
why you have
why.
them read it. You ask them to read it,
Right,
and
right.
then you ask them what it means.
Right, and ask them why Allah chose to reveal the supposed language for all people in the only language that apparently is incapable of being translated properly. I would additionally say that unless they are a native speaker, how did you learn Arabic? Did someone tell you what the words mean? Oh, someone told you what the words mean when you were learning Arabic? That means that you can tell me what the words mean, which means they can be translated. I mean, the whole thing is just so incredibly stupid. 85 to 90% of Muslims don't speak Arabic, and actually, approximately 0% speak Quranic Arabic. The language, like all languages, has changed over time. So it's totally 100% just a real stupid excuse to avoid having a conversation. So don't let them get away with it. Challenge them why that is the case. So welcome to the chat, Furin Kazan and Sheikh B. Stone.
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me?
Sure can.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, it's morning where I'm at. So, question that's kind of related. If it's not related, feel free to tell me. But I run into it a couple times when I'm talking to Muslims about did Abraham build the Kaaba, like in Mecca. They will sometimes say, "Oh, well, the Kaaba moved. Like it was originally somewhere else, and then somehow it moved to Mecca." So, like, how would you guys address this? Because it sounds kind of ridiculous.
I would ask them what classical scholar agrees with him that the Kaaba was picked up and moved, because literally all the sources say that Mecca was a super, super special place. They're trying to avoid the fact that Abraham was incredibly far away from it by like saying, "Oh, well, it just got picked up and moved," I guess. But yeah, that's just silly.
Yeah, I was just like shocked that they said that unironically.
Yeah, they're just making stuff up, possibly completely making it up on the spot.
Muhammad made
I
that
would go,
stuff
wow,
up.
that's really interesting. I haven't heard of that. Would you please give me an authoritative Islamic source for that?
All right, yeah, it's just absolutely ridiculous. All right, thank you guys.
No
Yep,
problem.
by all means, you're welcome to stick around and talk with us. Hopefully, we'll get a Muslim to join at some point. Unfortunately, Lorenzo is still having issues, but he did say, "I'm getting a new phone very soon, even though it will make no difference, as you will pull tricks anyway. But the truth that is on my comments, how you are completely helpless to respond, tell the." He probably ran out of characters. I think he's going to say, tell the audience to read
That
my
guy.
comments or whatever.
He's very
So
strict.
Lorenzo, I don't know if you're as deluded as your comments indicate, or you're just posturing and you know that you don't actually have anything. But whether you know it or not, you definitely are not impressive to anyone ever in the history of humanity. Even the Muslims would be embarrassed by you. Bilal, welcome to the chat.
Hi, Thaddeus.
Hello.
Uh, Hi, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, okay. Actually, Thaddeus, give me a second. I will talk next because I'm getting a call now. Okay?
Okay, no problem.
Okay, is
Okay.
Christ and
Okay.
salvation still here? Or did
Yes,
something
I
happen?
am.
You mean
I am
Shake B
Sheikh.
Stone?
Oh, Sheikh
Sheikh
Stone.
Beastone, yeah. Sheikh Blackstone. B, I don't wanna show it because it will be racist and I don't wanna be called racist. Thaddeus, I wanted to ask you, did you notice this foggy thing on your screen where you are shown like a foggy thing, like it's
Yeah,
like
yeah. So the one light bulb, the light bulb on that side burnt
yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah.
There's two lights on the green screen.
Ah,
Halfway through the light bulb burn out. So now that side's too dark and this side's too light because they got to be the same. But yeah,
that's why. And I'm wondering what the heck is going on there? What kind of gene is trying to consume my friend?
I'm finally the correct color though. Somewhere in the middle of the stream, I got. Although I have like this one is shining weirdly on my neck, so I have this weird bright spot on my neck that keeps weirding me out. But go back over here, light, because I had to reset up my lights too. There. That's
Guys,
a little
I
better.
wanted to tell
Oh
you that
wait, it's this side.
I'm
That's the problem.
I,
The
I,
light bulb is shining like directly at me rather than.
yeah. You want it as a 45-degree angle.
Well, it just I just bumped it.
Yep.
But anyway,
Uh, yeah. So hold that thought for 1 second.
mm,
Shake B Stone. So Islam is my identity says reasoned answer said that prostrating is not there in the Bible. Well, first of all, I didn't say that. I actually didn't say anything. That was Mary talking. But she didn't say prostration is not in the Bible either. That's not what she said at all. So then he asked, how did Jesus pray to God in the Garden of Gethsemane? So you want to repeat that
oh my
what we said about
goodness.
prostration in the Bible?
okay.
Did we
So
say
there
that
are
no one ever prostrates in any way?
Mhm. There are certain times where prostration is mentioned in the Bible. It is never described as putting your forehead on the ground. It is never described. So if you say that they prostrated like Muslims, no, because Muslims can't even decide how to prostrate properly, where you put your hands, what Muhammad did. If different groups of Muslims don't even know what Muhammad did, how dare you claim that everyone who is described as prostrating on the Bible did that? Jesus did not prostrate in the Garden of Gethsemane. He fell on his face. He fell on his face. He fell down with his face to the ground. He fell. So he fell on his face. He did not, I go down and I put my hands up and I go, ho, 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 like a little monkey. Because I am making God do what I want. I go and I do, and God obeys me and gives me and forgives my sins because I have gone through the magical prostration dance. Ha ha! So that's what praying is in Islam. It's this weird dance where Allah is required to do things for you in return for you completing the spell correctly. That is not in the Bible, and especially not there where Jesus falls on his face. Now, what Jesus says, the only time he describes how he expects you to pray, okay? The only time that he describes how he expects you to pray is that he says, when you stand praying, he expects you to pray standing as the most common way that you pray. Why is that? Because over and over and over again, the most common way that Jews pray is standing. There are things about standing in the courts at night and how many times I stand before you. Not how many times I bow before you, but rather how many times I stand before you. And what's particularly interesting in early Islam, it also describes prayer as standing. So when Muhammad, early on in those first 3 years, when he was imitating the Jews and even the Christians much more, it says Muhammad used to stand through the night or part of the night. He used to stand. And this is an image of Jesus praying. Tell me, when do Muslims do that? That is what is being described there in the Bible.
And I accidentally hit the window, but I also wanted to share this picture. Same idea.
So
Obviously,
no.
these are not photographs. These are artist's interpretation. but this is what it means to be prostrate.
Just to
He's
get
in
the gist.
extreme agony. He is laying out flat on the ground. This is the only prostrate position known to prayer outside of Muhammad's delusions. So, does Jesus pray like a Muslim? No. Does Jesus
No,
prostrate himself? Absolutely. Does Jesus pray while standing? Absolutely. Does Jesus
many times.
pray in a variety of positions? Absolutely. Because you know what? Our relationship with God isn't about the position of his body or our body, it's about our relationship. Oh my goodness.
Oh
Like the
my
true
goodness.
God, for some reason, doesn't seem to care what position your body is in. He seems to care about what your words you are saying and what those words mean for your relationship to him. It's not about magic words either. It's about your heart, your intent, your mind, your relationship with God. There is no magic formula to pray correctly. You have to actually have that sincere connection to pray properly.
Yes.
So, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So we also have Jesus looked up to heaven and prayed. So he's standing and he looks up to
Not only
heaven
that, he says
and
Father. He doesn't
yeah,
say
he says
Allah. He
Father.
says Father.
Father,
How
the hour
many
has
times do we have to say that?
come. Father, the hour has
Come
come.
on.
Glorify your Son, that your Son may glorify you.
Yeah.
As after Jesus said this, he looked toward heaven and prayed, guys. Now, Muhammad said you are absolutely not supposed to look toward heaven when you pray, because Muhammad believed that whenever you looked at something, your eyes went toward it. Your gaze like goes towards it, your eyesight goes towards it, has to hit something and then come back. And he's afraid that if you look at the sky, your vision will be snatched away when it's really far from you and it won't come back. And Allah might be offended by you trying to look at heaven and take away your vision while it's far away from you and it doesn't come back again. So Jesus is doing something that Muhammad explicitly said that you are not to do, because Muhammad had a very interesting idea of how vision worked.
Hello.
Hey, beloved.
Hello, Bilal.
Skanderberg, can you please do me a favor? Either make your microphone a little bit lower or mute it if you're not talking because you're making a lot of noise.
Are you talking to me?
No, to
No,
Skanderberg.
Okay, okay. No, actually, so I just look into the Jewish prayer. They are praying like Muslims. So I think I maybe even if you search in a Google, when Jews pray, they go to sujood. We say sujood. They bow down. Okay, you can see even in the Google,
Oh
you can
my
search it.
goodness, again.
Okay. Also, that's my point. Second, you talk like Islamism, paganism, like that. But I have gone through so many Jewish sources. Like as an example, Maimonides.
uh,
Let me give you a list. Okay, all of them say Islam is not
why
there.
why would I
Islam
why
is
would I care about Muhammad's position about Islam? What
no,
does that have to do, anything to do with anything?
no. I mean that.
I'm not
I mean that.
Jewish. I don't consider rabbis authoritative. I don't care what his position is. I care what the facts are.
Okay,
So, do
now
you
the
have any?
now the point is yeah. Okay, now my point is that yes, because even Jesus said if someone testified about themselves, it is that testimony is not true. Now, when we say we and you worship the same God, we are monotheistic people. We have a testimony outside Muslims. All of the Jewish sources say we are
Okay,
monotheistic people. Now, I know
let
you
me
cannot
follow your
say
logic to its conclusion, right? So, if anyone says anything that's not about themselves, then the testimony is true by your logic. So,
no mostly.
I'm about to
No,
tell you
no,
something that's not about myself, because that's what you said. Jesus said, if someone testifies about himself, he's a liar. And we Muslims, we don't testify about ourselves. We testify that uh, Jews and Christians believe in one God. Well, I'm about to testify about something that has nothing to do with me. Islam is a false religion. I just told the truth by your logic, so maybe you better come up with a better argument.
no. I'm simply saying the Jews, they don't have any valid reason to talk in regard of Islam, because that's what I'm
Sure
telling.
they do.
Because they
Sure
have
they
gone
do. They're opposed to
no,
Christianity.
no. Why they are opposed? Because they have the
Why are
valid
they
reason
opposed
to
to Christianity? Because they don't believe that Jesus is the Messiah. They believe that Christians have the wrong message, that often cases they believe that Jesus is the reason the world is screwed up because he came and he pretended to be the Messiah. He distorted the message and destroyed Judaism. So if you're going to tell me that Jews have no, if you're going to tell me Jews have no reason to reject Christianity or to be against Christianity, you have no clue what the average Jew feels like. To most Jews,
No,
Orthodox
So
devout
wait
Jews,
1 second.
rejecting Christianity is more important than anything else. So you have no clue what you're talking about.
So let
no,
me wait 1 second, Bilal. Bilal, I have to address your lie that Jews kneel and pray just like Muslims. Now, if you look at the words Jews praying and you find a whole bunch of people near the Dome of the Rock kneeling, those are not Jews. Those are Muslims praying to Mecca. And
no,
these images, hang on, are in articles about about how hard it is and the fact that Jews are excluded from praying at their holiest place because Muslims have stolen it and pretend it's theirs. Okay?
That's not
If
actually
you
the claim.
look,
That's not the claim he was making, Mary. He was
he's
claiming that
claiming that Jews
that
always
Jews
bow
are
down.
allowed to pray in a mosque, is what he was going to claim.
Well, he was saying that Jews
yeah,
bow down, that you can Google pictures and Jews bow down.
no. I'm looking at a video where's a rabbi explaining how to pray. In that one, he like Muslims say, if you're Muslim prayer, we put our hand, we are standing. When we are standing, we go down. So in the same way, they are going down. It is not 100%
Is,
No, they don't.
exactly not same. Yeah, not
so
same. Yeah, yeah.
Well,
if
I
I show
well,
you a if I pull up the first random video of Jews praying on YouTube, what is it going to look like? Make a hypothesis. If I just Google or if I just search on YouTube, image of Jews praying, what am I going to find?
I do not know. It is
You
depends.
will
I
find
Well,
them
what do you mean you don't know?
standing
You
in the
just claimed that Jews
synagogue.
pray in a specific way. So are you not even willing to test your hypothesis that that's the way Jews pray?
yeah. Go to YouTube and search.
I
You
don't know
can find
exactly
so many.
what I'm going to find. All right, so
Yeah,
I'm just going to search
okay,
for Jews
here's the
praying.
first one. I've already done it. The very first one is
You, are you sharing your screen?
I'm not showing my screen, but I can do that. I just put it in the chat. But
Okay.
Jews praying.
No,
What is
I'm going to share
Ramadan?
my screen and we'll do it live. Okay, we'll
Okay.
do it live so that he knows that
Okay. All right.
I'm
Here,
not making this up.
let me share this.
I got it. No problem. So I'm going to search for Jews praying. Look, see, you're on. It's my homepage. I haven't like pre-selected anything. I'm just searching for Jews praying. What is the first video that comes up?
All right.
What
Click
is
on
the
it.
Amidah, the Jewish standing prayer? Really? That's the very first thing that came up when I searched for Jews praying. Let's go ahead and watch a tiny bit.
Because if we watch, it'll be
Oh,
copyright claim.
standing up. I don't think that I shared the volume anyway, so I'm muting it. So it's not over me. But look, they're standing up, standing up,
Jump ahead before we get.
standing up. Yeah. I'm jumping.
Okay.
Standing. All these Jews seem to be standing. Very interesting. That, and again, I actually had no clue what I would find. It was possible I would get a Muslim propaganda video.
Not only standing,
Yeah.
notice
Yeah,
And this
that's
guy's
right.
standing.
hopping
This
around,
guy's
eh?
standing. This guy's standing.
Yeah, Thaddeus. The mean is that's a standing prayer. That's see how he prays.
Yeah,
Open the video.
that is how
Oh,
they pray. That is their main
Yeah.
prayer. Is this
Yeah,
special
open
standing
open
prayer
it.
that
Yeah.
Okay. Does it say anything about standing? Well, first of all, it came up as the first result, right?
Not
So
that one. Not that one.
I
Go back.
just searched at random.
Okay, go back. That's a Jewish prayer actually. Go back.
The process of prayer for a Jewish man. Did I say that no Jew ever in the history of the world has prayed prostrate? Did I make that claim? I bet I could find a video of a Jew praying prostrate if I searched long enough.
Yeah.
See, this guy's explained the process of prayer.
Actually, Thaddeus, even in Islam, we have the standing prayer. That's me. We have so many prayers. The daily prayer.
Now
they
you
pray
So
every
there's
day.
nothing
now you're
distinct.
changing it, yeah. Now Bilal, you're changing.
Yeah.
Now you have the standing prayer, yeah.
Yeah.
Bilal,
Go
So,
to
Bilal,
yeah.
you make no
you want me to
know that, yeah?
play this one so you can see someone possibly maybe bowing down eventually?
Yeah, that's the way
Did
we
I
pray.
say that no Jew has ever in the history of the world bowed down? Your claim was that Jews pray normally by prostrating.
Yeah, this is the daily prayer. This is the daily prayer they used to pray. That's what
That
I'm
guy
telling.
is
Because,
that guy is a
What do you
Muslim,
mean
he's
this
not
is the
Jewish.
daily prayer? You have no clue
yeah,
what this is. This is just a
yeah,
random video.
no, Thaddeus, you have to look into what
Congratulations.
they
There's a
say.
picture of a Jewish person praying prostrate. Does this video claim that this is the only way you can pray?
Well, they're not praying prostrate
What
according to
is
him.
your point
You
even?
press your forehead against the ground, or you are not doing a proper prayer. He never presses his
Yeah,
head to the ground ever in that image.
yeah,
Why don't we share the one of the Jews praying Selachot at the Western Wall?
Well, no, look. So he's going through the whole motion, right? He goes down, he bends down. I think he may touch his head to the ground, but then he immediately gets back up as part of the prayer. Does this look like, other than this freeze frame, does this look like a Muslim going through his prayer routine?
No.
no,
No,
Of
I
course
made it
not.
not agree. I say this is the way Jesus prayed. So it is
no.
You
kind of
think
No.
this
similar.
is the
That's
way
what I say.
Jesus prayed? Are you insane?
And I'm Thaddeus. This is just do your research. Okay,
Well,
do
we
it.
are doing it in
Do it.
front of you.
Okay,
Are you kidding me, Bilal?
let's pretend this is the way Jesus prayed. Is this the way Muslims pray? Jews, you stand up, say a prayer, then bow down for a couple seconds, then get back up, say another prayer, then bow down for a couple seconds, because that's what he's doing. That's what this guy is
Yeah,
doing. So if you want to
nah,
claim this is how Jesus prayed, this doesn't look anything like a Muslim. Look,
yeah,
almost
Bible
all of his
says.
time is standing up. Almost all of his time is standing. He's praying this entire time. He's praying standing, praying standing, praying standing. Then he gets down, briefly touches the ground, then gets back up. He's showing humility before God, but this is not remotely like a Muslim prayer.
Oh, yeah, this is like I don't
No,
say
it
it is
isn't.
Oh,
hundred
so
percent.
Muslims spend
No, it
most of
isn't.
their time standing.
Yeah.
Does he
Is that
have?
correct?
Wait,
Okay,
Thaddeus,
now,
Thaddeus,
now,
wait a bit,
now
Bilal,
go to Islamic prayer.
Bilal,
Now go
Bilal,
to now.
Bilal,
Just
shut
do
up
one.
and listen to my question. Bilal,
Okay.
do you see him moving his head left and right? Do you see him doing that move?
No.
No. So you have to do it in Islam, don't you?
Yeah, I
You
didn't
see?
say it. It's exactly. See, left and right. We do it.
Yes.
They do it in a
Not
different way.
standing.
We,
You are
Oh,
doing it
give me a
standing.
different way. Thank you. It's not the same. That's the point. Just because he gets down,
Do you
oh,
do
look,
that?
now he's completely flat
Wait,
on the
wait.
ground with his arms
Thaddeus,
out.
do you do
This
that,
is
Bilal?
nothing like Muslim prayer at all, other than the fact that he briefly touched his head to the ground. This is totally ridiculously dishonest for you to claim that he's praying like a Muslim.
yeah, yeah, but at least we are closer. You are nothing closer to Jesus. That's what
Yeah,
we
you are
say.
pagans. You are pagans. You
So
stole
you're a
everything from every
pagan,
every
but
religion.
you think
So
you're
don't
close
tell
to
us anything.
Jesus because you think
Yeah,
that there's sometimes that Jesus might have prayed this way and you do it too. Well, then the Hindus are proper worshipers of Allah because Hindus bow like that. Now, share what
actually,
I've got here. So there's
actually,
a seven bow beginning before any rule of private prayer. Because it's before a rule of private prayer, I can't find a quick video of it, but you have seven bows at the waist and one full prostration sometimes. A lot of times, one of the bows, sometimes they're all full prostrations. You can choose that. And that means on your stomach on the ground. Sometimes they're just bows to the waist. A lot of times you have uh, a full bow for number 5, I believe is the most common one, a full prostration. So these seven bows then make all Christians are really Muslims because all Eastern Orthodox Christians, because they have bows in their prayer service if it's a private prayer. According to you, all Jews have Jews sometimes bow. Therefore, Jews are really Muslims. This is the most ridiculous, absurd argument ever. And it's an argument from appearances. And it shows that you guys have no faith at all. You have no
okay.
belief. Instead, what you have are a series of magical spells
Copy
that you
paste.
want to cast,
Copy
and you think
paste.
other people have the same magical spells you do, and so those people are a continuation of you. But your arguments work against you because you do not say that the Jews are good Muslims because some of them bow sometimes. You do not
Yeah,
say that all
that's
these
a good
Eastern
point.
Orthodox who are supposed to
Yeah,
bow.
yeah. So Bilal, I want you to answer that. So are those Jews that in that picture, are they faithful to Islam?
Of course, according to Islam,
Of
we
course
say
they
if you
are.
believe in no, no,
Okay.
serious.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
okay.
according to Jews, right? Let's just leave Christians out of this. According to Jews, uh, Yahweh is their father. Who is the father of Muslims?
Okay, let me answer. But serious, you should let me answer. You
Uh,
cannot
I,
continue.
I will
Just
let you
answer the
answer my
question.
question. I will not let you talk about something different. So
No,
answer my
just
question. Who is the
okay.
father of Muslims according to Islam?
Okay. In Islam, we don't have the father-son relationship. But
Okay.
even
Thank you. Thank
Okay,
you.
another
You
So
don't
you
have the
just
same God.
you,
another
you
question.
don't
no,
you don't have the
Another
same
question.
God in that way.
Who is the Goel, the redeemer of Muslims? Who is the redeemer? Have you heard that word before?
no.
Good. Thank you for answering honestly, because that is not a religious concept in Islam. The redeemer of Jews and Christians alike is Yahweh, is God. And that is a very, 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 very important title for God, is redeemer. But
No.
Allah is
Okay.
no one's redeemer.
Okay. Let's move on to another example. He already agreed that's a difference. So let's cite another difference. So
Thaddeus.
how do you
Thaddeus, may
get
I ask you
forgiveness for
something?
sins in
Thaddeus.
Judaism? What?
Thaddeus.
Yep.
Can we show to Bilal how the Hinduists pray? Because I believe they pray exactly the same like Muslims.
Sure
Because
thing.
Not no no no
I
not
believe
even not even
they
okay.
are
I
prostrating
I to- I
with their bottoms up. Stop it, Bilal. And I think they have the same type of how to say it. Uh,
because
I'm not
I
sure, but I never seen any of them
Yep.
Hinduists
Yep.
pray.
So
Just to see
I just
how
I
another
I just did
religious.
I just
Yeah.
yep. I did the same thing. I just searched for Hindus praying, and this was the first top short here. Look, here is a Hindu praying. Look,
Wait,
what is he
he's
doing? What is he
putting his
doing?
hands in the
Oh
proper
my
position.
goodness, he's putting his head on the ground with his butt up in the air.
And he's putting his hands on either side of his head like a good
He
Muslim.
must be a Muslim.
Clearly,
He must be a
he
Muslim.
is worshiping Allah through that cow.
no. Actually, what's happening is in India, Hindus are forcing Muslim to bow down to a cow. This
No.
is this is yeah. This is what just search Hindus praying in a temple. You can find it. This is a Muslim. Hindus
Uh,
are forcing him
This
to
is
bow
a
down.
Muslim
well,
praying to a
Yeah.
cow. Yeah.
let's pretend your theory is correct. That this is that this individual is not doing a normal Hindu prayer. You said all that matters to prove that Jesus prayed like Muslims is supposedly his body position, even though his body position looks nothing like Muslims. So this guy is demonstrating the body position. What is the problem here? How is this not legitimate?
Okay. Let me show you. When I say Jesus prayed like Muslim, what we say, even in the Judaism, you have to clean your hands and go to prayer. Even in Islam, we have to wudu, we have to make clean your hand, and after that we go to prayer. Second, in Islam, we have to face a direction. Like in Judaism, they have to face a direction. Okay. Also, the steps are not. I don't say 100% okay, but even 60-70% steps are fine. So that's what I'm talking about. Okay. So first thing. Second thing, even the Jewish rabbis, they themselves acknowledge Islam is not pagan. It is not paganism. It is Islam is a monotheism. That's what I'm talking about.
Why would I care what some random Jew thinks about it,
Not
Islam?
random.
Unfortunately, this
I'm
didn't have
talking
any
about
pictures
all of
of
them.
in design.
I'm talking about all
Are
of
you
them, not
saying that
random.
All
All of them.
Jews,
all 20
all
million
Jews
Jews?
say that Islam is not
Are you
paganism.
kidding,
This is
man?
amazing.
Dude, I've
Okay,
seen
okay.
Orthodox Jews call you pagan. What are you talking about?
All the time.
Okay, okay.
All the
Now,
time.
now
So,
only you.
Are those
answer your
Orthodox Jews
theory to the
lying?
test. Bilal, if I can find a singular Jew who's, I'll just do a Google search for Jewish opinion of Islam. If I find a Jew that says
Okay.
you're pagan, what will that mean? Will you just say that they're mistaken? And thus you made this argument for no reason, or does your argument actually have a purpose?
Yeah, I am
And
telling.
why are you appealing to Jews anyway? Since when do you believe in the authority of Jews?
Yeah, that means if they testify, we come from the same source. That's what I'm telling. Because we have a testification outside of Islam, even they don't like us. They say we are right. That's mean if someone do
Okay,
not like you,
I can find
yeah,
Bilal. Let's follow your logic. If I can find Muslims who say that Christians are justified, does that mean that Christians are justified? If I can find a Muslim who says that Jesus died on the cross, does that mean Jesus died on the cross?
I mean the Jews mean Jewish scholars. So if a Muslim scholar, reputed scholar, I mean not one. I'm talking about not one. Even if you come to Islam, majority scholars say I'm talking about the majority, not
The
minority.
majority of Muslim scholars say that Christianity is not a pagan religion. Does that mean Christianity is
No,
true? The majority of
majority
legitimate Muslim
say
scholars say that Christianity is not a pagan religion.
no,
So
no, no.
if you
Give
only
me one Muslim
worship
scholar.
Including Allah, by the way. Including Allah.
yeah.
Allah endorses
No,
Christianity.
So
Is Allah wrong?
no,
if you worship only
no.
Satan and no one else, are you a pure monotheist by worshiping Satan alone and believing that Satan alone is worthy of worship, Bilal?
I'm not talking about the one. We are
I don't care
worshipping a
what you're
true
talking
God.
about. If is a person who worships Satan alone, is that a pure monotheist?
That's
So,
Satan alone. It is.
That's
make
right.
an
Yeah,
argument.
I'm
So, Bilal, form your silly question, your silly stuff in the form of an argument that proves Islam is true. So
Because
you're right now you're just saying people agree with Islam. So form your argument
yeah,
like this. Let me form an argument for you, and you can say if you agree with it or not. Okay? Jews hate Islam. Some Jews say that Islam is not pagan. Therefore, Islam is not pagan. Is that your argument?
I am telling almost all the reputed Jewish scholars say Islam is not paganism.
Well,
We
I
and you,
I reject your statement about almost all Jewish scholars. I bet you haven't even read one Jewish scholar in your entire life and are
of
just
course,
going with a few
of
cherry picked comments that you found on a Dawa website. But that's not what I asked you.
no,
I asked you, is that the form of your argument? Jews supposedly believe that Islam is not pagan. Jews don't like Islam, therefore they must be right about it. Therefore, Islam is not pagan. Is that the form of your argument?
okay. Shall I state my
Is that
argument
the
first?
form
What
of
I'm
your
telling,
argument? Yes or no?
that is no. Let me clarify my
Okay,
argument.
you phrase your
Shall I do
argument
that?
then. You phrase
Okay,
your argument.
okay. First my point is that most of the Jewish scholars they don't have any valid reason to talk about on behalf of Islam. That's my first point. Second point, most of the famous prominent Jewish scholars say Islam is not paganism; they are monotheism. In fact, they worship the same God. Second, same scholars, almost 90%. Okay, almost 90% of the
You
scholars
have no
say
idea what the percent is. Stop making up numbers.
okay, okay. This is not me, man. This is not me. Go to the YouTube. There's a Jewish, so many Jewish scholars. I
No
can give you
doubt,
the
no
name.
doubt. It's not from you. I know that you're just repeating a Dawa line that someone told you. That's.
Exactly.
Now,
I just want you
I
to
am.
phrase the argument. I want you to phrase the argument, and then I'll offer
Okay,
you an argument in the exact same form, and we'll see if you reject that argument or not. So, what is your argument? I think your argument is that let's just use your 90% figure. 90% of Jews say that Islam is not pagan. Jews don't have a good reason to support Islam, therefore Islam is not pagan. Is that your argument?
yes, not Jewish people, Jewish scholars,
Jewish
not the people.
scholars, okay? Good. I'll give you an argument in the exact same form, all right?
Okay.
100% of legitimate atheist historians say Jesus was crucified. Atheists have no reason to support the truth of Christianity. Therefore, Jesus was crucified. Do you accept that argument?
Yeah. Let me clarify that one. Can you give me 1 minute? I say the the crucifixion happened. There's no doubt in that. Crucifixion happened. We
Then
don't deny
Quran
the
is wrong.
crucifixion. We say Jesus was not crucified. Someone else was crucified.
That
We
is
don't
not
deny
what
the crucifixion.
historians say. 100% of atheist historians say Jesus of Nazareth, that man, not some other man, was crucified. None of those atheists have any reason to believe Christianity is the truth. Therefore, the Therefore, that Jesus was crucified. Now, by your logic, that is a perfectly sound argument. That is in the exact same form of argument that you are offering. So either you need to abandon your argument or you need to accept that Jesus was crucified. So which is it? Is your argument crap? Is it an invalid logical argument? Or was Jesus crucified? Those are the only two options. That's the only possibility here because the arguments are in the exact same form.
Yeah, my problem is crucifixion happened, no doubt in that one. Someone was
No,
crucified.
Bilal, you're just off. You're just going off. You're like, I want to believe what I want to believe because I want to believe it. What does Hanifa mean? What does a Hanif mean? Bilal, what does Hanif mean to you?
Hanifa, I don't
What
know.
is a Hanif?
I don't.
You don't know?
Yeah.
So the religion of Abraham, he's called a Hanif according to the Quran. Do you know what that means?
Hanif?
Here, I'll type it in the chat. Okay, look in the chat.
Okay, I have not heard that verse
See it?
ever before.
Bilal, do you see my
Hanif. He doesn't know what it means, Mary, so just go ahead and tell him what it means.
So, according to Muslims, it means a pure monotheist, the religion of Abraham. Because this is what Jews and Christians both called the people who followed the religion that Muhammad eventually said was his own religion, Islam. Do you know what that word means in Aramaic?
Yeah, honey, can you give me? Yeah,
he doesn't know, Mary.
Okay, yeah, I did not know.
You gotta spell it out like he's a small child because he doesn't know anything about Islam or Christianity. All he knows is a few Dawa arguments that he memorized after he saw them on YouTube.
It may be my pronunciation. What do you want, Bilal?
No, I need the Quranic reference. Yeah, I think maybe your pronunciation do not sound familiar to me. Maybe you can give me the reference, Quranic reference, so I can go and look in. Because I can read and write in Arabic. So
Hanif.
Give me the reference.
So Hanif.
No, I need
Arabic. Hang on.
He wants a verse of the Quran that uses the word.
Okay.
Hanif.
And no, so my pronunciation was fine. Quran verse 367.
Okay.
Al Imran 67. So it says, Ibrahim was neither a Jew nor a Christian, but a Hanif, right? What does Hanif mean, Bilal?
He's a monotheist.
That's what it means to Muslims. That was a word that comes from Aramaic. So you're saying that Muslims are indeed Hanifs, right? That's what they were. That's another word for Muslim, according to you. Okay, great. So Hanifs are Muslims. Now in Aramaic, hang on. In Aramaic, the word is Hanapa, which means heathen. So the people that the Jews and the Christians says, those people over there, they are heathens. They are pagans. They are disbelievers. They are heathens. That is a word that these people took and applied to themselves. Right? Kind of pagans and other pagans. But they are heathens. They're disbelievers. Do you know what heathen means? So
my point is
that
you cannot.
Your point is Google it. We got it. You're not interested in an actual sophisticated argument. You're interested in a moronic, logically invalid argument that you won't accept the same exact logical form when it's about anything else, because you think somehow, because some Jews, even 100% of Jews, for the pretend imagination of yours, believe that Islam is not pagan, that somehow means Islam is not pagan. Who cares? It's still false. I don't need it to be pagan. It's an obviously false religion, whether or not you want to call it pagan.
Okay, Teddy.
So give me one argument. Give me one argument why Islam is true.
Okay, Hanif. First, Mary. The Hanif is an Arabic word. You cannot put Arabic word.
Borrowed into Arabic from Aramaic. It is an Aramaic word, just like Ibrahim.
Mary, your argument's way too sophisticated for him.
Okay. Give me the reference. Which scholar said that one? Give me the reference
Arthur
because you are
Jeffries
saying something.
explains how Hanif was borrowed from the Aramaic. Arthur Jeffries. I will find the chat and put that in the chat. Hang on one
Okay,
second. It's in your
the
summary.
Hanif means Arabic meaning means monotheism.
No,
But
Nothing.
see,
it means
he's
not
going to
the
say
Arabic word originally.
the argument
Okay,
is too sophisticated for Bilal. He can't deal with that level. He doesn't understand how
no, no,
language works.
no.
I don't want to hear any more about Hanif. Okay, you got your reference. You can go look it up on your own time. I want an argument why Islam is the truth.
Islam is the truth. Yeah, I can give so many reasons,
Just
but
One.
one.
I would like
I
one.
don't, because Islam is the first religion. It was continued until Moses,
That's an
and it was
opinion.
propagated by Muhammad.
That's an opinion, not a
So,
fact.
Well,
yeah,
actually,
that's that.
Thaddeus, I will follow his reasoning and I will say Buddhism is the best religion ever. They bow down like Muslims do. They worship the one real God. They are the best, and they make they make you to be better when you become a Buddhist.
Yeah,
So I believe
it's a
Buddhism
okay.
is better
Yeah, that's
than
one.
Muslim than Islam.
The salvation. You did not get my point. I am telling.
No, that's
Even
what you are saying.
Islam
That's
claims
your argument,
You're
Bilal.
giving your
Islam
opinion.
That's your argument.
Hey, Bilal, Christianity is the best religion. Therefore, Christianity is the best religion. Therefore, Christianity is the true religion. Therefore, I win.
Exactly.
Really? That's your
It's
argument?
circular
Your
reasoning.
argument that Islam is true is that you say it's the best religion? Of course, the best religion is also the true
I
religion. But how about you give me an actual argument for Islam being true? Your opinion that Islam is great is not an argument. It doesn't even come a million miles within an argument.
yeah. Thaddeus,
True.
give me a moment. Moment, I am getting a call. Give me a moment.
No problem. No problem. We'll give someone else a chance to speak while he's taking
Yeah, we have
a call.
Skadenberg
Is
that's
anyone else in the
here,
chat a
Raj.
Muslim?
Can I say something?
Go
Are
ahead,
you
informer.
I used to be a Muslim. I converted to atheism, but I'm
Okay.
non-secular right now. I don't even believe in kind of forms of atheism that pushes out there. I understand the secularism of freedom, but I found myself Islam as being kind of dictatorship doesn't allow free thought or
Kind
freedom
of,
of a thought.
kind of. It is exactly what you said. Not kind
Exactly,
of.
like you know what
It's
I mean.
a it is the
Uh,
dictatorship
Let
of
him
the
speak.
highest
Let him speak. I
order.
want to hear what he has to say.
Thank you.
Let
Uh, so generally, like when I kind of look at myself, I'm just talking to my point of my own self. So I experience the kind of religion that Islam offers literally denies me to think for myself. And therefore, it limits me my own growth and experience of being living form on planet. Therefore, everybody else that is around me, they are my enemies, which is not true about at all. I looked at every human being or every living things as a part of me, as a living thing. So when we look this religion stuff, be it Christianity, be it Buddhism, be it Judaism, be it Islam, be it many other kind of form of religion, as we know, as humanity, we had thousands of different forms. It's good that we can learn something, nothing wrong learning, but it is wrong to deny human beings to have a free thought, have a free expression, have a free experience, yet be it religion exists literally kind of, let's say, 10,000 years or 15,000 years, so be it. But as a living things, we exist billions of years, which is that story is also being wiped out of the kind of face of the earth. I can understand the Islam guy, Muslim people thinking, oh, I am this. No, I'm not this, I'm not that. You are just human being, living being. You are here for a short period of time. You're going to live in a single body. You are one-time thing. You're not going to be anything then but just that body. But as a thought, as a mindset of stuff, we all could imagine different things. So if a religion is just imagination in your head, you should not really express to somebody else to be part of it. That's my view.
All right.
well,
Well, thank you for that. Well, first of all, congratulations on seeing the truth that Islam is a false religion. Now, I understand when people leave Islam, why they would reject any and all religion, why they would be, soured by the experience of religion. And I thank you for being honest and expressing your views on that. Obviously, we are Christians here. We believe that Christianity is the truth, and we don't just believe that it's good or true for us, but we
And
believe
by the
that it
way,
is.
I value the Christianity more than Islam myself. I live in a Christian country. That's why I left the Islamist places. I think Christianity offers the humanities a little bit more of a leeways, is more freedom, and more of a religion that I could really accept today, but not Islam.
Excellent.
Well,
So we will be wrapping up here soon, but
yeah.
I want to
Can I say something?
extend. Yeah, I'll let you say something. But first, I want to extend an invitation, and then I'll let Mary speak. I would invite you to email me, Thaddeus@reasonanswers.com, and maybe we can schedule a time to talk, either publicly or privately. I have no problem with either one, because ultimately, if Christianity is the truth, it means everything. So that's what motivates us to share, to have these streams. But at the same time, I understand why you would be hesitant to even consider the truth of a religion after being in Islam. So, Mary, whatever you want to say.
Okay, and so what I want to say very briefly, just to have you consider and mull over, there is a reason why the concept of humans having inherent rights came to exist just because they're human, only came to exist in a Christian context. And that reason is that our Bible teaches us that we are made in the image of God. And that means that our life is different in quality than the life of a mouse or a rat or a bug or a camel or even a whale, right? That
I
our
agree on
life
that point
quality.
with you, Mary, 100%. I think Christianity definitely give you that little bit of road
Right.
to kind of go towards that freedom, for sure.
But that's why it happened, because we're the only ones who understand humanity in that light. And what our Bible says is that we are created in the image of God for the purpose of bringing glory, the glory of God in the world. So we glorify God through, and we are an expression and extension of his love. And so we are supposed to love each other in the same way. And what love means is willing the good of another, not willing another's pleasure. And so to have a system in which you are not worshiping yourself, meaning that you yourself are not the full end. If you yourself are the end, that means that you have all these little gods who are demanding worship and sacrifice to themselves. They end up not only miserable, but horribly corrupt and do terrible things to other people. You also get ideas where you're just one moment away from having a kind of paradise on the earth, and there are just a few people standing in your way. All the political atheism always ends up with massive amounts of bloodshed, because they always believe that they are themselves gods in a way, that they are the reference to which everything is made, and that what stands between them and perfection are the few people who aren't cooperating. And there's always going to be those few people. So no matter what, you still have to keep killing and killing and killing.
And I'm
And
totally 100% with you. I think that's wrong to, as a living human being or living thing, we think that we are God. I
right,
think
but
that is the why I actually moved from atheism itself.
but that comes from the fact that there is a God, and the real God is nothing like the God of Islam. The reason why you're taught all of these, the reason why Islam is what it is because it is an antichrist religion. Allah is pure will. He just has rules and they make no sense, and they're just set up in this, like it is to poison everyone against the true God, the true
I
God
agree.
who is love. And so if you can talk to us about why we believe that historically, not just that it explains humanity in the only way that's coherent and makes sense and is humane. It's like the only humane way of viewing humanity. But also historically, if you can contact Thaddeus, he'd love to talk to you. I'd love to talk to you. It doesn't have to be on a stream or whatever. It can be privately. Voice or typing. Voice is usually easier because people can go back and forth. We would love to do that. So, but
I
I'll
really
let.
enjoy your conversation, by the way, guys. I hope I'll be part of your conversation more often. You
Sure.
guys doing great job and
Thank you.
great
Excellent.
panel
Yeah.
and excellent.
Yep. We definitely welcome you back anytime. Um, Coincidentally, or perhaps not, Islam is my identity. A long, long time ago, way back in the stream, said, if you ask this from reasoned answers, so for me, can he explain what it means for God? What does it mean by God made us in his image? Sorry. And Mary was talking about that a little bit. Being made in God's image means a lot to Christians. It means a lot to
May I
Jews
say
as
Does it mean
something
well.
on that
unity?
point, please? May I say something
Eh,
on that point?
Go ahead. You can say something first, and then I did actually want
Just
to say something, but
for
go
one
ahead.
second.
Go ahead.
Earlier today, I was watching a girl that wanted to make an AI to have ethics, and she failed miserably. Meaning a robot to have ethics. She failed miserably because she came to the conclusion that the computer that she wanted to make to have ethics had to be an extension of her own character. That's what, in some ways, means that God made us in His own image. We are like an extension of the character of God, but we're supposed to do good in this place. Yet we are doing mistakes. That's the whole point. That we are doing mistakes, and that's why the world is the way it is. That's what I
I
wanted
think
to say.
doing mistakes is because we have so many polarities and different group of people. They
Not
decided
only
just
that,
create their own religion
just by yourself informer, how many mistakes did you do in your life? For
every
example,
day.
exactly, because every time that we choose to do something, because we don't know the outcome of our choice, we just make a choice. We cannot at that time compute in our brains what the outcome will be.
I think
So
it's
every
genuinely,
time, every time we will make a mistake. Every
yeah,
time
I think
because of that.
genuinely because of basically limitation of knowledge.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
to
We
me,
are
the
limited.
Christianity doesn't limit you from the knowledge, but Islam really does drastically. I mean, I read the
Well,
Quran, I read the Bible. When I read the Bible, I see a little bit more of a light, so to speak. But when I
you
read the
too.
Quran, it's look like everything is just everybody else doesn't need to exist anymore.
I don't know how you read the Quran, really, because on the second chapter or something in the middle of the second chapter, I had to stop. I didn't understand anything. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
it's
But
like
obviously,
reading.
it takes a while.
I'm telling you, I have a 3-year-old here. She speaks better than the Quran is written.
True.
So I don't know how else to explain it. It's
I personally thought this
incoherent for
very,
me.
very dramatic thing. To be honest, is very, very sad.
It's
We
an
have
incoherent
like
book.
that in
How
our
do
world.
people read it? I mean, okay, maybe it would make sense in Arabic if it would rhyme, okay? Well, let's make it rhyme in English.
Well, very,
Still, it
very
won't
Doesn't
make
quickly.
rhyme.
sense.
It
Still,
So
doesn't
it
yeah,
won't
rhyme
you
at
make
can't
all.
sense.
rhyme
I
quite that
mean,
much. But very quickly, Informer, I did 2 recent streams on the Trinity. I've done like 4 in all, but the 2 recent ones, especially the most recent one, I talk a lot about the image of God and how that is reflected in essentially a harmonious and well-ordered society, and how uh, to understand humanity, you need to understand, well, you don't need to understand the Trinity, but you need to follow the pattern that is set forth by the Trinity, whether or not you understand that this comes from the Trinity or not. But I think it's a good stream.
It's
Yeah,
very,
so
very, very great point, actually.
let me provide my answer to this, and then we'll wrap up. So, what does it mean to be made in the image of God? It means a lot of things. I mean, everything that's said by others, I agree with. One thing that people often miss, however, is that the word for image in Genesis, that we are made in God's image, is the same word that's used of idols. When God says, "You shall not make images," "You shall not make idols," it's the same word as what's used to describe us. Well, what is an idol? What is a image of a god? It's a representation of that god, of that false god. So, what are we as human beings? We are God's image in this world. We are his representatives in this world. That when we live the way we're supposed to, the way we're called, the way that human beings were before the fall, before sin entered into the world, we represent God properly. Obviously, we can also represent him improperly by sinning. And that's a very powerful thing, that we have intrinsic value because we bear God's image. We are his representative. We have value by our very nature. And when the Bible describes, in the early chapters, when it describes the right relationship of humans to God, we are called children. And someone who is living in a proper relationship to God is his child. So in Christianity, we have this very deep, intimate connection to our Creator, where we are more than just something he created, but rather he endows a piece of himself in us. So that is how I would answer that question. So I want to thank everyone for joining today. I'm not going to take closing comments from everyone.
Ted, can I make a comment? Just a comment.
Sure, you can make a comment, Said.
Okay, you know the Jewish book Tanakh. Tanakh in the Tanakh.
Tanakh is the same as the Old Testament. Yes, I know it.
No, it's not. It's not the Old Testament. It's the Tanakh.
Yes, it is.
Yes,
the Jewish book. A Jewish book.
Okay,
Okay.
Yeah. So the Jewish, so the Torah is the divisions of
The Torah is the Old Testament, but Tanakh is another Jewish book.
No, it's not another Jewish book, Said. Just make your point. Forget it. Just make your point, okay?
Okay. In that, it says Jew can worship in the mosques, but
No, it doesn't. It does not say that at
all. No.
A Jew cannot worship in church.
Said, you are so clueless. You have no idea what you're talking about. The Tanakh is equivalent to the Old Testament. It was written 1,000 years before the first mosque was even made. It does not say anything about mosques. The argument you are trying to make is that late medieval Jewish scholars said that it was acceptable for a Jew to worship in a mosque, but not acceptable to worship in a church. You've totally confused the argument. And we already addressed that argument earlier when Bilal tried to raise it. So I'm not going to address it again.
Very well put today.
What a weird claim.
Yeah.
I mean that this is the guy that says that all religions are false. That's the guy that says all religions are false. And now he says in Judaism, well, it's false. Why do you even say it?
No. Said says all religions are true. He says the opposite. He says everything's true. Hinduism is true, and Islam is true. I am a Muslim who believes in Hinduism. He's just totally confused.
He thinks everybody else just believes in them all wrong, so he isn't a religion.
I think all of the Muslims are confused.
Yeah.
Oh, they are.
Well, yeah, you're 100% right about that. So we are going to close out now.
Next time,
thank you so much for having me, guys. Have a great evening. Thank you so much.
Sorry, Cool. Maybe we can get you next time. I apologize.
Yeah, not a problem.
Hey, really fast before we close out, can I make a prayer request? Is that cool, or?
Yep, absolutely. And I'll close out in prayer, so that's very appropriate.
Yep.
Yeah, so long story short, there's like a group thing this weekend, and there's a Muslim who's definitely going to come, so just like prayer for wisdom, patience, knowledge, all of that good stuff would be very, very appreciated. Thanks.
Absolutely. So one announcement from me. I'm back, clearly, right? I'm back from the conference, and I have a stream scheduled for Saturday on Can We Trust the New Testament with Chris, so that should be very good. Chris Kloss, sorry, I should have been being more clear. That'll be his first time officially being on the channel, and I'll have my Bible study on Saturday. I'll probably get something scheduled for Sunday, but I haven't scheduled that yet. So should be back to the usual schedule of Tuesday, Saturday, and Sunday. We'll be back next Tuesday, probably to continue this series. Maybe we'll have a different topic. I'm not 100% sure. Mary, you want to sum up what we talked about, or any closing thoughts from you, and then I'll close this in prayer.
Okay, the summation is that the story of the Black Stone is quite confused from the Islamic end. Anything that happened before Muhammad's time is confused. It's very obvious that there was a time that the Kaaba was there before Muhammad. I'm not talking about whenever it's taken away after. Before Muhammad, The Kaaba was there. There was no stone. The stone was found in dirt, and somebody put it in. Now, this is supposed to be a restoration, but the entire story of it being hidden and then restored makes no sense. So most likely it was at that point that it was found for the first time, and that it wasn't actually attached to the Kaaba whenever it was early on built, which was not at the time of Abraham. We'll show more proof of that later. The black stone, like all the stones of Islam, and there are a whole bunch of them, not just one, they're all the exact same. They have corresponding pagan stones in other places with the same sorts of traditions, the same sorts of behavior, the same sorts of bowing down to them, everything that was done before. There is nothing that distinguishes Islamic veneration or worship of the stone from that of pagans. There is no distinguishing feature. If you plopped in all the modern Muslims, as long as they're in ihram and everything and look like proper pilgrims, and you lifted up the whole thing and you moved it and you plopped it down in AD 300 among a whole bunch of pagans, there is no one among those pagans who would suspect, those Arabian pagans who would suspect this is anything other than just another shrine of a pagan god. Everything is identically pagan. The original pattern is pagan and is a continuation of paganism. So, yes, we should sponsor.
Yeah, David said earlier, can we sponsor a GoFundMe for Lorenzo to get psychological help? I'll put him in the prayers. And I remembered that I owe Nix Highlander a super chat, so I'll just click on this.
Brothers and sisters, why to lose this great opportunity? Remember, when the person is on his deathbed, the last minute, he will ask Allah Jalla wa Ala to be delayed for 1 second to do what? Not to pray, not to do other things, but to give sadaqah, because sadaqah you can give it just like this, in 1 second.
So thank you for your donation last time that I missed, Nix Highlander. So I appreciate all of the support that everyone gives from time to time. So I'm going to close us with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this time together. We thank you for the wonderful teaching that Mary brought. We thank you for the mind you have given her and her willingness to share her knowledge with others. We pray that this stream reach hearts and minds ready to hear the material, that you use the teaching today to reach new people, to reach Muslims who are in need of the truth, who need to know the reality of the God or so-called God that they serve. I'd like to ask for a couple prayer requests. I'd like to pray for Lorenzo. I know that Lorenzo is beyond human help, and I pray that you step into the situation and miraculously heal him from the demons that possess him. I'd like to pray for the witnessing opportunity that was mentioned earlier. May you provide wisdom, may you provide patience, may you provide the words to say, and open the heart of this Muslim so that they may hear the truth. I also pray for Informer. I pray that he return to these streams and that you give me opportunities to share the truth of the gospel message with him. Finally, I pray for everyone who has been watching. May you bless them. May you keep those who are Christians safe. And may you give the Christians the boldness to share the truth. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you so
All
much.
right.
Amen.
God bless everyone. See you again soon.
Thank you.